Chapter 12:38. The Emperor of Heaven looked at everyone's doubtful eyes and pointed at the statue, saying, "Yao, do you recognize this statue?" The Empyrean maiden looked at the statue from head to toe. Memories from long ago flooded her mind and occupied her mind in an instant. She opened her eyes wide in disbelief and asked, "This statue is from the ancestral shrine." The Emperor of Heaven nodded in satisfaction, saying, "You didn't have many chances to enter the ancestral shrine in the past, but you still remember the statue. It's not easy." "That's right, this is the Fu clan's ancestor, Fushi." Fushi. Once this name came out, everyone was shocked. This was the Fu clan's ancestor. A long time ago, the Fu clan was not strong and prosperous, but ever since Fushi was born and cultivated to the level of the Emperor of Heaven, the Fu clan rose to power and became stronger and stronger. Without Fushi, the Fu clan would not have become so strong. Everyone's eyes were immediately attracted to the statue, as if they wanted to see what was different about this Fu clan's ancestor. But to their disappointment, Fushi looked like a pale-faced scholar instead of a brawny man who was 8 feet tall and had a circumference of 8 feet. Regarding Fushi's magnificent life, there were only a few records in history, but it was enough to make people intoxicated. Now that they were looking at the statue, they couldn't help but feel emotional. Bang! The Empyrean fairy knelt down on both knees and kowtowed deeply, bowing respectfully. Seeing this scene, everyone was deeply shocked. She was the Empyrean fairy, and she was actually bowing to a statue. It was clear how high Fushi's position was in the hearts of the Fu clan. Tang Zheng had been thinking about the Emperor of Heaven's words, and asked, "What do you think is wrong with this statue?" The Emperor of Heaven took a deep look at Tang Zheng and said, "We'll have to start from the heavenly tomes. It is said that our ancestors were favored by the heavens and were bestowed with spells and imparted the heavenly tomes. This is the origin of the heavenly tomes. The heavenly book is a book that is impervious to fire and water. There is not a single word on it. It is called the wordless heavenly book. However, our ancestors' magic was bestowed by the heavens, which allowed him to see through the secrets of the wordless heavenly book. From then on, he passed down this method. Every generation of the Emperor of Heaven has to pay homage to the statues of the ancestors and obtain the blessings of the ancestors. This way, the Emperor of Heaven's path will be smooth sailing." The Emperor of Heaven talked non-stop. The others pricked up their ears and heard every word clearly. Tang Zheng concentrated. He knew that after such a long foreshadowing, they were about to get to the main topic. Beautiful novel cotton candy. As expected, the Emperor of Heaven continued. The statues of the ancestors contain the great Tao that the ancestors condensed throughout their lifetime. When they pay homage to the statues of the ancestors, the Tao intent in the statues will evolve bit by bit. They will be blessed and benefit their descendants. Tao intent. Tang Zheng raised his eyebrows and his heart was slightly moved. He had heard many people talk about the great Tao, but he himself only knew half of it and didn't even have any comprehension. Yan Qingyi comprehended the great Tao of heaven and earth and obtained the divine ability of prophecy. However, what exactly was the great Tao of heaven and earth? Yan Qingyi couldn't clearly explain it. The great Tao couldn't be seen or touched. Laymen knew nothing about it and couldn't even touch the threshold. This was a world of difference from ordinary cultivation. Now that he heard that this statue actually contained the great Tao, after paying homage, the mysterious Tao intent could be blessed. It was too magical. With Tang Zheng's knowledge, he still couldn't understand all of this. He looked at the statue with a strange expression and didn't get anything. The Emperor of Heaven didn't care about the shocked expressions of the others. As for whether they could understand the profound meaning, he didn't care even more. After he finished speaking, the Emperor of Heaven stared at Tang Zheng and added, "You have something to do with the heavenly book and also fate with the great Tao. What you see with your eyes is very different from others. Others can't see the mystery of this statue, but you are different." Tang Zheng's heart trembled. The feeling this statue gave him was indeed extraordinary and was quite different from others, but he still could not see through the mystery behind it. After the celestial emperor's words, there was a sense of enlightenment. Could it be like what the Emperor of Heaven said? I have fate with the great Tao and the heavenly book, so even the feeling between this statue and me has become different. Tang Zheng thought to himself. The others widened their eyes and tried their best to see the so-called Tao intent in the statue. In the end, their eyes were red and tears were about to fall, but they still couldn't see anything different. Could it be that he really had no fate with the great Tao? Everyone couldn't help but feel discouraged. Even the Empyrean fairy was no exception. As a member of the Fu clan, she didn't have as many opportunities as Tang Jing did. She indeed felt frustrated. The Emperor of Heaven looked at the others and his gaze fell on the Empyrean fairy. He knew his daughter very well. How could he not know what she was thinking? He comforted her, "Yao, you can't force anything. You will have your own opportunities." In fact, if the Empyrean fairy really had fate with the great Tao, he would have taught her the heavenly book long ago. Why would he keep it a secret from her? The Empyrean fairy also thought of this and the corner of her mouth twitched. She smiled bitterly and said, "Father, I understand." The Emperor of Heaven sighed. Although he was the Emperor of Heaven and had great powers, he couldn't do anything about this. "Since you said that I have fate with the great Tao in the heavenly book, why can't I get the Tao intent in this statue?" Tang Jing asked again. His attention was completely attracted by the statue and he couldn't help but feel excited. He was facing so many strong enemies and urgently needed to become stronger. This was a rare opportunity and he couldn't just let it go. Haha. The Emperor of Heaven heard and laughed loudly. "I said it very clearly just now. You have to worship the statue before you can get the Tao intent in it." Tang Jing frowned. What kind of spell was this? Could it be that the statue could really transmit Tao intent to him if he worshipped it? "Tang Jing, do you still remember the life totem?" The inner demon's voice suddenly sounded in Tang Jing's mind. Tang Jing was slightly taken aback. He had a deep memory of the life totem, so how could he forget? "I remember, but what does this have to do with the life totem?" He didn't understand. "Have you heard of the same thing?" The inner demons asked. Worshipping the statue is similar to worshipping the life totem. In ancient times, one of the most important ways for the ancients to obtain energy was through worshipping their ancestors or totems. As such, worshipping was very popular. During worshipping, the power of the ancestors or totems would be blessed and these people would obtain what they wanted. Do you understand? Tang Jing was dumbstruck. He didn't think that this was the same principle as worshipping the life totem. Fushi's era was very long ago, so he must have worshipped totems as well. He had used the same principle to hide the great Tao he had learned in his life within the statue to bless later generations. Of course, his situation was very different from ordinary totem worshipping. Ordinary totem worshipping only needed to perform the corresponding ceremony and chant the corresponding incantation, and the worshipper would obtain the corresponding energy. But he was different. Ordinary people would obtain nothing even if they worshipped the statue. Only those who were fated with the great Tao and the heavenly tomes would be able to obtain its Tao intent. This was even more complicated, and the threshold was even higher. It was clear that Fushi had taken great pains to not waste his life's knowledge on unnecessary people. Tang Jing was deeply moved. After understanding the mystery, Tang Jing looked at the statue again. He felt that it was even more extraordinary, and his eyes flickered. The Emperor of Heaven seemed to see through his thoughts and said, "You are fated with the great Tao and the heavenly tomes. By worshipping your ancestors, you can naturally obtain their great Tao intent." Fushi's Tao intent was an unparalleled sacred item, and no one else could touch it. The Emperor of Heaven was so generous because he had already made up his mind. Once Tang Jing obtained Fushi's Tao intent, the Emperor of Heaven would think of ways to make him a member of the Fushi clan. There was no doubt about it. However, the two people involved, Tang Jing and the Empyrean fairy, were unaware of it, and their attention was focused on the statue. Hearing the Emperor of Heaven's words, the others were immediately envious. Tang Jing's luck was off the charts, and he could obtain Fushi's Tao intent. Seeing that Tang Jing was still in a daze and did not say a word, Yan Luyun was the first to be unable to sit still, and urged in a low voice, "Young Master Tang, what are you still in a daze for? Quickly agree to him." He could not wait for such a good thing to happen to him, but he did not have such an opportunity, so he could only give up. Of course, he could not bear to see Tang Jing miss out on such a great opportunity. Yi Dingdang and Fang Shishi's hearts were raised to their throats as they were deeply afraid that Tang Zheng would refuse. This was a good thing that many people yearned for even in their dreams. If he were to refuse, then he would be an idiot. Tang Zheng was not a fool, and he also desperately wanted to obtain Fuxi's Dao intent. He did not have an excessive request, and it was just worshipping the statue, so what was wrong with that? Fuxi was an ancient, and Fuxi's descendants had done him a great favor, so worshipping Fuxi was a logical thing to do. Alright, but what kind of ceremony? Tang Zheng agreed immediately. The Emperor of Heaven heaved a sigh of relief, afraid that Tang Zheng would refuse. The Fu clan was no more, and only he and his daughter were left. His daughter was not a suitable candidate, so wouldn't the Emperor of Heaven's legacy be lost in his hands? Absolutely not. He had inherited the legacy of the Fu clan's ancestors, so he had to pass it on. This was his duty and responsibility. And now, the only suitable candidate was Tang Zheng. If he refused, it would mean that the Emperor of Heaven's legacy would be lost. Then he would not be able to face the ancestors of the Fu clan and the past generations of Emperor of Heaven. But when he thought of his anxious thoughts, he felt a little depressed. Others could not get this kind of opportunity, but he was worried that Tang Zheng would refuse. He really could not find the words to describe it. Tang Zheng did not understand the Emperor of Heaven's thoughts and was worried that he would make some excessive request. Ancient sacrificial ceremonies had many strange rules. Slaughtering livestock was the most common thing, and the most outrageous was slaughtering living humans for sacrifice. That was extremely cruel. The Emperor of Heaven looked at Tang Zheng with mixed feelings, and thought to himself, first, you have to inherit the Dao intent of Ancestor Fuxi, then you must become a member of the Fu clan, and then you must listen to me, your senior. Chapter 1239. The Emperor of Heaven said solemnly, the ceremony is just a facade. If you are sincere, it will work. When you worship the ancestors, the most important thing is the intention. When the intention is there, the ancestors will naturally know. These words were very mysterious. If you are sincere, it will work. This was a common trick used by many Jianghu swindlers. If someone else said this, Tang Zheng would definitely snort and roll his eyes at them. When these words came from the Emperor of Heaven, no one dared to question or refute. They calmed down and quietly comprehended the true meaning of these words. The Emperor of Heaven was not lying. This was what Fuxi had instructed back then, and no one dared to change it. For so many years, the Emperor of Heaven had been like this. When they worshipped Fuxi, they paid particular attention to sincerity. When they were sincere, the ancestors would work and bestow them with the Tao of the Great Way, helping them on their path to becoming the Emperor of Heaven. After the Emperor of Heaven finished speaking, he kept his mouth shut and did not say anything else, leaving Tang Zheng time to think. Tang Zheng understood. He did not kneel and kowtow like the Empyrean fairy. Instead, he bowed slightly to the statue like a courteous and knowledgeable person. He clasped his hands together and said, Junior Tang Xiao greets Ancestor Fuxi. As soon as he finished speaking, it was as if he had been immobilized. He remained motionless in that posture like an old monk in meditation with his eyes closed. His vision turned black. The statue disappeared. Everything disappeared. He did all this as if he had good luck and there was a force guiding him. Suddenly, a ray of light lit up. Although he had closed his eyes, he could see this scene. It was incomparably magical. The outside world remained the same, calm and tranquil. The statue was still the same statue, motionless. The people were still the same people, just like before. But there was no light in front of Tang Zheng. These people did not know how Tang Zheng felt. They did not say a word and stared at him, afraid to disturb him. Tang Zheng was as calm as still water, neither sad nor happy. The mysterious light in front of him gradually converged and changed shape. He quietly watched this scene without the slightest surprise or fright. When the light gradually faded and a human figure appeared, a strange feeling welled up in his heart. However, he did not panic in the slightest. Instead, he was quiet and peaceful like a baby. Ever since he started cultivating, he had rarely experienced such peace and tranquility. The Emperor of Heaven watched this scene quietly without saying a word. The Empyrean fairy wanted to ask more, but when she saw the look in her father's eyes, she swallowed her words. The Emperor of Heaven could clearly feel the changes in Tang Zheng's realm. Before, Tang Zheng was like a raging sea, but now he was like an old well without ripples. He was the complete opposite, like a completely different person. A person who could enter a meditative state so quickly must have cultivated to a certain level. At such a young age, Tang Zheng was supposed to be at the peak of his youth, yet he was able to do this, causing others to look at him in a new light. The Emperor of Heaven sighed secretly. Tang Zheng was more extraordinary than he thought. This might be the reason why heaven chose him. He took a deep look at the statue of Fuxi and thought, "Ancestor, could it be that all of this is also your arrangement?" All of this was too coincidental. If the Empyrean fairy had not brought him to the divine gate, he would not have discovered the heavenly book. The ancient clear heaven scroll would have been covered in dust and would never have been connected with the heavenly book. If all of this was not fate, what could it be? There was no other explanation. The scene in front of Tang Zheng changed again. The light gathered together and finally turned into the appearance of a person. It was so vivid that it seemed to be smiling at him. After seeing the person's face clearly, Tang Zheng was shocked. It was very familiar. He was very surprised and exclaimed, "Fuxi!" This person was exactly the same as the statue. How could he be wrong? Fuxi walked towards him step by step. He subconsciously wanted to step back, but found that he was motionless. Fuxi's pressure was so strong that Tang Zheng could not imagine it. Fuxi seemed to be smiling. It was more lively than the statue. His eyes seemed to have magic, instantly attracting Tang Zheng's gaze and making him immersed in it. Fuxi walked in front of him and slowly stretched out his finger. There was a faint light on the tip of his finger, but it did not look like a cold, shining weapon. Instead, it gave people a very strange feeling. The energy contained in the tip of his finger was earth-shattering, but it was not exposed. The tip of his finger touched Tang Zheng's chest. Tang Zheng subconsciously wanted to dodge, but he was powerless. He could only watch the tip of his finger touch his chest. That ray of light instantly entered his chest and disappeared into his body. Before he could figure out what was going on, the scene in front of him changed and ripples appeared in front of him. Fuxi became blurry. The smile on the corner of his mouth became more and more intimate. He stepped back step by step like a tide. The light in his body burst out and instantly flooded his internal organs and meridians. It rushed to his brain. The words on the ancient scroll of clear heaven lit up and sparkled. At the same time, another text appeared little by little. This text was exactly the same as the handwriting on the ancient scroll of clear heaven. The heavenly book. Tang Zheng was delighted. Although he had previously memorized the contents of the heavenly book, his brain did not produce such a heavenly book. This was like a copy of the heavenly book that was vividly displayed in his mind. It complemented the ancient scroll of clear heaven and was extremely mysterious. Could this be because of the Tao will? Tang Zheng was stunned. He remembered that he worshipped to obtain the Tao will. However, other than this light, he did not gain anything else. Could that light be the Tao will? He did not guess wrong. That light was indeed the Tao will. He sincerely worshipped and was also a fated person. Fuxi's spirit manifested, and with a single finger, his Tao intent was transmitted from his fingertip to Tang Zheng's heart. The Tao will was like blood that quickly spread to every part of his body. The Tao will activated the heavenly book. When people browsed the heavenly book, even if they saw the contents, without Fuxi's Tao will as a guide, the heavenly book would not be able to display its full effect. Only with the guidance of Fuxi's Tao will could the true effect of the heavenly book be activated. At this moment, Tang Zheng had achieved this and was enjoying this extraordinary gain. He confirmed his guess and was secretly delighted. He quickly calmed his mind and studied the heavenly book bit by bit. Wisps of understanding seeped into his brain like a silent moisturizer. The genuine qi in his body was not turbulent. Instead, it was as still as water in an ancient well without any waves. However, the genuine qi was increasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In particular, his ninth main meridian flashed with golden light. In an instant, his entire body was enveloped by the golden light. He looked solemn and gave people a sense of oppression from the inside out. The ninth main meridian was already extraordinary when it merged with the dragon vein in Emperor Qin's mausoleum. It seemed that under the stimulation of the heavenly book, the ninth main meridian was particularly active. In the golden light, his body became transparent and the ninth main meridian could be seen clearly. Everyone else stared with wide eyes. When they saw the ninth main meridian that looked like a golden dragon, apart from the Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean Fairy, everyone was shocked. Ordinary people only had 8 main meridian, but Tang Jing had 9 main meridian. His body structure was different from ordinary people's. No wonder he was so powerful. The Emperor of Heaven was also looking at the ninth main meridian with envy. Although the Emperor of Heaven's cultivation base was high, he was also envious of the Celestials' body structure. This allowed Celestials to be stronger than others at the same cultivation base. The ninth main meridian was able to store even more Jinqi, increasing one's battle strength and endurance. It was also able to play a more powerful role. This point was obvious. Tang Jing opened his mouth, and golden Sanskrit words flew out from his mouth one by one. The Kshitigarbha Sutra. The Empyrean Fairy immediately recognized it. Those golden Sanskrit characters were the Kshitigarbha Sutra, the supreme item used to suppress Asuras. Once the Kshitigarbha Sutra appeared, Tang Jing's appearance became even more solemn. What is the Kshitigarbha Sutra? The Emperor of Heaven had never heard of the Kshitigarbha Sutra before. In addition, when he had inherited Fushi's Tao intent, although there had been a manifestation, it had been quite different from Tang Jing's. It's a cultivation technique created by the ghost realm's Dizong of Goguryeo. It's not simple. The Empyrean Fairy also didn't know much about the Kshitigarbha Sutra, so she could only give a rough answer. The Emperor of Heaven's eyebrows jumped and he muttered to himself, he actually has a connection with the ghost realm. Dizong of Goguryeo? Isn't the ghost realm's 10 Yama kings reigning supreme? When did this Dizong of Goguryeo appear? The Emperor of Heaven wasn't completely ignorant of the ghost realm. The ghost realm and the human realm were like mother and child realms, so they had always coexisted peacefully. However, the Emperor of Heaven knew that the ghost realm's strength was extraordinary. They had always been led by the 10 Yama kings, so they weren't easy to deal with. The Empyrean Fairy was unable to answer the Emperor of Heaven's question, so she angrily said, only he knows all of this. He once went to the ghost realm. The Emperor of Heaven suddenly understood and nodded. Celestials had the 9 Yang Saint body. Only with this special body could they freely travel through the ghost realm and know so many things about the ghost realm. The Emperor of Heaven's eyes shined as he looked at Tang Jing. The Kshitigarbha Sutra's Sanskrit characters danced around his body. Not long after, the Sanskrit characters descended and covered Tang Jing's body. The Sanskrit characters intertwined to form a cloth-like item. Kasaya. The Emperor of Heaven's pupils shrunk as an almost forgotten item appeared in the depths of his memories. That was an extremely long time ago when there were hundreds of schools of thought. Hundreds of schools of thought contended, and all kinds of learning and magic formed their own schools. It was a very prosperous and enlightened era. Some people said that it was the best era, while others said that it was the worst era. That was because there were many possibilities in that era. In the ancient era, after cultivation had sprouted and experienced the initial ignorance, it gradually prospered and formed many schools of thought. Hundreds of schools of thought contended, and many geniuses were born. Many new cultivation methods were born, and there was intense competition. Among them, there was a school of Buddhism. The people of the school of Buddhism wore kasayas and had solemn appearances. They loudly chanted the name of Buddha and blossomed with resplendent light. They left behind a thick and colorful stroke in that era of hundreds of schools of thought contending. Buddhist cultivation focused on enlightenment, and cultivation focused on opportunity. They had very few disciples, and in the end, they declined and disappeared from history. Chapter 1240. The reason why people like Qi Yu and the inner demons in ancient times didn't know about the conflict between martial artists and cultivators was because they were still in the early stages of cultivation. All kinds of messy cultivation existed, and there was no division. Beautiful novel cotton candy. Later, in the era of the 100 schools of thought, cultivators and martial artists became the only two remaining cultivation factions and gradually became antagonistic. This Kasaya pulled the Emperor of Heaven's memory back to a long time ago. His gaze became deep, and he pondered in his heart, Buddhism has long disappeared and no longer exists in this world. How did Tangjing cultivate Buddhism's techniques? Ksitigarbha Sutra. The Emperor of Heaven's heart moved, and he immediately thought of the key point. Could it be that Ksitigarbha Sutra was a Buddhist technique? Only this reason could explain all of this. Suddenly, the Emperor of Heaven became interested in Ksitigarbha Sutra, and his interest in Dizang of Goguryeo increased greatly. Only Dizang of Goguryeo was a Buddhist, which could explain all of this. Buddhism in the human world had disappeared, and he didn't expect that there was still a member in the world of spirits and souls, and he carried forward Buddhism's supernatural powers. Although the Emperor of Heaven had never been to the world of spirits and souls, and he didn't understand the current situation of the world of spirits and souls, but one thing was certain, Dizang of Goguryeo's position in the world of spirits and souls was definitely not low. He had guessed correctly. Buddhism was a short-lived flower in ancient times, and I didn't expect it to take root and flourish in a new soil. Perhaps this is the opportunity that Buddhism talked about. Buddhism didn't establish itself, just because the time wasn't right. He looked at Tangjing thoughtfully. He cultivated Ksitigarbha Sutra. Could it be that Buddhism also borrowed his hand to make a comeback and try to open up its own territory in the human world? This time, the Emperor of Heaven couldn't figure it out. There was no doubt that no matter what, the Celestial Emperor would never allow his successor to become a preacher of the Buddhist sect. His successor was also going to impart the Tao of the Fu clan, and not any other unorthodox Tao. In the heart of the Emperor of Heaven, all other Taos had to stand aside. Only the Tao of the Fu clan was the true Tao of heaven and earth. Buddhism was short-lived. Later on, the numerous temples and monasteries were imitations of those who didn't know the true meaning of Buddhism. They were just jokes. Tangjing is the real Buddhist. I have to make it clear to him that he must get out of this as soon as possible. He must not fall deeper and deeper. The Emperor of Heaven made up his mind. He looked at Tangjing's kasaya and wished he could take it off. However, this was a critical moment for Tangjing, and he could not be disturbed. Otherwise, it would only do him more harm than good. Emperor of Heaven could only suppress the displeasure in his heart. Tangjing continued to immerse himself in the wondrous state. Buddhism emphasized enlightenment. This time, Tangjing had obtained Fushi's Tao insight, and he had a sudden epiphany. A good novel. He chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra. This was a natural action. Even he himself did not realize the mystery behind it. With the kasaya on his body, this was a phenomenon that could only occur when one truly understood the essence of Buddhism. If the Dizang of Goguryeo saw this scene, he would definitely be overjoyed and chant the name of Buddha. For ordinary people, this was something that they could only dream of. However, Tangjing was lucky enough to obtain all of this. Perhaps this was fate. Buddhism emphasized fate, and Tangjing was also a person of fate. Not only was he fated with the so-called Tao of heaven and earth, but he was also deeply connected with Buddhism. Tangjing was completely unaware of all of this. He was just following his heart. In the Sumeru world, the Shura suddenly opened his eyes. There was a trace of golden light in his eyes. He had always been suppressed by the Ksitigarbha Sutra, but it was the Ksitigarbha Sutra that could increase his intelligence. This was something that caused him pain and joy. The Ksitigarbha Sutra sounded again. This time, the Shura did not show any signs of pain. Instead, he was quiet and peaceful, as if he was enjoying it very much. The Shura's spiritual intelligence had been awakened. He did not know why, but he could clearly feel that his spiritual intelligence was rapidly increasing. This abnormal phenomenon made him overjoyed. If it was in the past, he would have instinctively cheered. However, now that he had awakened his spiritual intelligence, he had become deep and even a little shrewd. Therefore, he showed a painful expression, which was no different from before. Tangjing's mind was completely immersed in other places. He did not notice the Shura's abnormality. Otherwise, it would definitely arouse his vigilance. In addition, there was another person living in another place in the Sumer world, Xianyin. Xianyin was injured by the soul-searching technique and became a mentally disabled person. She was imprisoned in the Sumer world and was almost forgotten by Tang Zheng. Last time, Tang Zheng kept chanting the Ksitigarbha Sutra in the Sumer world. Over time, there was a subtle change in her body that no one knew. This time, the Ksitigarbha Sutra sounded again. A trace of wisdom appeared in her eyes, and the dull look in her eyes disappeared. She opened her eyes wide and looked around curiously. At first, she showed a suspicious look, not knowing where she was. Finally, she came to a realization and a mysterious smile gradually appeared on her mouth. The Ksitigarbha Sutra was recited loudly. Xianyin listened as if intoxicated. The light in her eyes became brighter and brighter. But in an instant, it disappeared, leaving only the restrained light of wisdom. Tang Zheng never thought that the Ksitigarbha Sutra would not only awaken the Shura's spiritual intelligence, but also make him smarter. Xianyin was also blessed by this, and her stupidity was cured. Xianyin regained her spiritual intelligence and understood what was going on. Her heart was also in awe. She was not as arrogant as before and became cautious. She had already lost to Tang Zheng once. Although Tang Zheng did not kill her, that was by luck. If Tang Zheng found out that she had recovered, he would definitely not let her go. Perhaps her life would come to an end. In order to survive, she must think of a foolproof plan. Tang Zheng, I have been unhindered, and countless people in history have been toyed with by me. In the end, I fell into your hands and became a fool. I will remember this enmity. Don't worry, one day, I will repay you double what you have done to me. Xianyin silently made up her mind, and an imperceptible cold light flashed in the depths of her eyes. My recovery must have something to do with this sound. Her attention was immediately attracted by the Ksitigarbha Sutra. This is not an ordinary technique. If I can understand the essence of it, it will be of great benefit. Even if I can't understand the essence, if I can find a flaw in it, when I fight Tang Zheng in the future, I can take him by surprise. Xianyin did not try to break through the shackles of the Sumer world. She knew that Tang Zheng's cultivation increased rapidly. She did not know the current situation of Tang Zheng, so she did not dare to act rashly. She was afraid that she would expose herself and lose her chance. She became a fool again, but in her mind she firmly remembered the Ksitigarbha Sutra, and tried to figure out the profound principles of it. The Dizang of Goguryeo recited the Ksitigarbha Sutra to deliver all living beings from torment. Even the ghosts of the 18 layers of hell could be converted, so it was not difficult for humans. When Xianyin calmed her mind and tried to figure out the Ksitigarbha Sutra, her mind was brought to a mysterious state by the Ksitigarbha Sutra. The Ksitigarbha Sutra delivered all living beings from torment, and Xianyin was one of them. Naturally, she could not escape this rule. She did not know the situation, but was immersed in the mysterious state, unable to extricate herself. In the future, when Xianyin recalled her life, there was no doubt that this was the most crucial moment and would completely change the trajectory of her life. Tang Zheng stopped reciting, and the cassock disappeared. The golden light dissipated, and the 9th main meridian was hidden in his body again. He opened his eyes, and everything was clearly displayed in front of him. Fushi's will did not directly affect him. His cultivation was still the same, and his skills did not become more profound. Suddenly, everything in his eyes changed subtly. If he did not try his best to catch this change, he would not be able to detect it. This change was that everything in his eyes was full of mystery, as if there was a kind of Tao operating in the unseen world. This kind of Tao was extremely mysterious, and it was impossible to catch. What's going on? He raised his eyebrows, revealing a suspicious expression. The Sky Emperor had been staring at him the entire time. When he saw the suspicious look on his face after waking up, he hurriedly asked, "Do you feel something different?" Of course there was a different feeling. Tang Zheng nodded subconsciously. The Emperor of Heaven said with a smile, "That's right, this is the essence of the ancestors' will. It has given you another unique perspective to see the world." Unique perspective? Tang Zheng was even more confused. The Emperor of Heaven did not hide anything, and explained with all his heart. The Emperor of Heaven comprehended the great Tao of heaven and earth. Everything in the world has its own Tao, and only the great Tao of heaven and earth is orthodox. You've obtained the inheritance of Tao insight, and Tao insight will appear in your eyes. Look at the grass, trees, flowers, and stones in your surroundings. They all have their own Tao, and the Tao operates in everything. Observe the Tao and comprehend the great Tao. This is the essence of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Tang Jing seemed to understand, and pondered for a moment, yet did not really catch the essence of what was said. But one thing was certain, this was absolutely a good thing for him. No matter if it was the Tao of all things or the great Tao of heaven and earth, he just had to cultivate with all his heart. When the time came, success would naturally follow naturally, and there was no need to think so much. The others looked at Tang Jing with burning gazes, and they could only feel envy. Judging from how Ji Wuxiang racked his brains and didn't hesitate to chase after him from afar for the sake of seeing through the secrets of the heaven entrance, the so-called great Tao of heaven and earth was extremely tempting. But Ji Wuxiang racked his brains and returned in failure, and it benefited Tang Jing instead. Besides feeling envy, the others weren't jealous. All the people present had deep relationships with Tang Jing, so they were sincerely happy for him. Tang Jing heaved a sigh of relief, and then he glanced deeply at Fuxi like a statue as he silently thanked Fuxi in his heart. The Emperor of Heaven looked at Tang Jing with gratification and instructed. The inheritance of the great Tao has been successfully passed down. Tang Jing, from today onwards, you must cultivate diligently and not let down the kindness of the ancestors' inheritance. Understood. Next, we'll be talking about another important matter. Since you've inherited the ancestors' Tao insight, then you're a member of the Fu clan from today onwards. But you're not a member of the Fu clan, so only by becoming a member of the Fu clan would you be able to properly inherit this Tao insight. The Emperor of Heaven spoke without end, and he didn't give Tang Jing the chance to think. Tang Jing frowned as he suddenly had a bad premonition. Chapter 1241. These words were earth-shattering, shocking everyone to the point that they were dumbstruck. Like wooden puppets, they stood there in a daze. D7% CF%, D3% C4%, B8% F3. Tang Jing's eyelids twitched a few times. Then, his eyes widened as he stared at the Emperor of Heaven. Seeing his serious expression, he really didn't seem to be joking. Only then did he know that the other party was serious. But, are you kidding me? Is this how you sell your daughter? Although I'm very outstanding, you don't have to be in such a hurry to marry your daughter to me. No, you're asking me to marry into your family. What era is this? There's actually such a thing as marrying into your family. If Tang Jing liked someone, he would marry her officially. How could he marry into her family? Wouldn't that be a joke? The Emperor of Heaven didn't give him a chance to think. He looked at him aggressively, as if forcing him to agree immediately. The Empyrean fairy was dazed for a moment. She immediately understood her father's thoughts. The inheritance of the ancestors' Tao couldn't be passed on to outsiders. So, this was the only condition that Tang Jing could fulfill. However, marriage was as important as life for a woman. Fuxi had never thought that she would marry someone else. She had lived for so many years and seen so many joys and sorrows. She had long since passed the age and state of mind of a little girl. The parents' orders and the matchmaker's words. The Emperor of Heaven didn't even ask for his daughter's permission. In his opinion, although he loved his daughter, he had to make the decision on such a major matter. He also believed in his judgment that Tang Jing was the best choice. What he didn't give to his daughter before, he was going to give it all to her now. She opened her mouth and wanted to refuse, but when she saw her father's expression, she swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. She had lived in modern society for so long, but many ideas were deeply ingrained in her bones. She was still no different from the ancient people. This was the case regarding marriage. Fang Shishir and Yi Dingdang looked at each other in dismay. They had no idea how things had turned out this way. Before the two of them could recover from the joy of Tang Jing's words, they were so shocked by his words that half of their souls dissipated. They were shocked. They looked left at Tang Jing, right at the Emperor of Heaven, not knowing what to do. This was definitely enough bait. Very few people could resist this temptation. It was like reaching the heavens in a single step. No matter how big the other families in the world were, could they be compared to the Emperor of Heaven? Of course not. The Emperor of Heaven's identity was too prominent, so much so that their self-confidence was shaken. To read a book, please go to 520. They encouraged and comforted each other with their eyes, silently believing that Tang Zheng would not abandon them. This was a kind of absolute trust, mutual trust that could only be formed after going through trials and tribulations. Tang Zheng did not disappoint them. After being stunned for a moment, he immediately retorted and said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "Senior, marriage is an important matter. How can you treat it so lightly?" The Emperor of Heaven did not understand Tang Zheng's thoughts and said, "It is precisely because marriage is an important matter that it is decided by the parents and spoken by the matchmaker." Tang Zheng finally remembered that the other party had the mindset of an ancient person. He patiently explained, "My heart already belongs to someone else, so I can only accept your good intentions." "Your heart belongs to someone else?" The Emperor of Heaven frowned, clearly displeased. Fang Shishir and Yi Dingdeng became nervous. They did not know when, but the two of them had tightly grasped each other's hands. At this moment, the two of them shared the same fate. "My Yaoer is so outstanding. Is there anyone else who can compare to her?" The Emperor of Heaven questioned. Tang Zheng was unmoved. He looked at the Empyrean fairy and said, "She is indeed an outstanding 1 in 10,000. Among the girls I have met, there is no one who is stronger than her. But when it comes to matters of the heart, it is important that both sides are in love. A melon that is forcefully picked is not sweet." The Emperor of Heaven automatically ignored the second half of Tang Zheng's words and casually said, "Since you also admit that she is outstanding, then all the more you should be together. There is no need for so many excuses. Moreover, it is normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. If you take my Yaoer as your wife and take other people as your concubines, I am an open-minded parent and will not object." Take a wife and concubines? This word was like a bolt of lightning that struck everyone. This was a modern society, not an ancient society. How could there be such a custom? Yan Luyan looked at Tang Zheng with a smile that was not a smile. He thought to himself that if other people were to encounter such a good thing, they would have already eagerly agreed. 3 wives and 4 concubines, this was something that many men dreamed of. Tang Zheng was not an ordinary man. Naturally, he would not agree to such a ridiculous proposal. He had feelings for several girls and it was not wrong to say that he was a romantic. On the contrary, he was not a pervert. He did not want to sleep with every woman he met. That was not a human, but an animal. The Empyrean fairy had a prominent status and also had the 9 saint body. However, he did not have feelings for the Empyrean fairy, so it was impossible for them to be together. This was the persistence and responsibility of a man. He was together with other people because he had true feelings for them and was connected to their hearts. He was very good at distinguishing between the relationships. Tang Zheng did not know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at the endlessly pestering Emperor of Heaven. He did not expect the dignified Emperor of Heaven to be like this on this issue, which put him in a dilemma. He did not hesitate and said straightforwardly, "Senior, I still have to say the same thing. I appreciate your kindness." Seeing Tang Zheng refuse again and again, the Emperor of Heaven's expression gradually became cold. His gaze toward Tang Zheng became somewhat unfriendly. Tang Zheng straightened his chest without the slightest bit of fear or guilt as he faced the heavenly emperor. Their eyes met and invisible auras collided in the air. No one was willing to give in to the other. The Emperor of Heaven had never met someone with such a stubborn temper. If he had thrown out this condition to others, they would have already scrambled for it. Tang Zheng actually made all kinds of excuses. How preposterous! The Emperor of Heaven's heart was burning with anger. Everyone could feel his anger. The Empyrean fairy's heart was filled with a bitter taste and even a trace of disappointment. She could not help but think of the scene when she saved Tang Zheng. Her lips pressed together and a trace of ripples appeared in her heart. This kind of ripple had never appeared before. It made her feel a bit at a loss, a bit of resistance, and also a bit of liking. Hearing Tang Jing refuse without hesitation, that trace of ripple came to an abrupt end. All kinds of feelings welled up in her heart. She looked deeply at Tang Jing and said to the Emperor of Heaven, "Father, let's talk about this later." She actually understood Tang Jing's character quite well. Especially when Tang Jing interacted with other women, she could see him more clearly. He was a person who valued friendship and righteousness. He was not as emotional and cold as he appeared on the surface. If she continued to force him, it would instead be counterproductive. She wanted to persuade her father, but in front of so many people, saying this would only make her father lose face and would only make the situation worse. The Emperor of Heaven did not understand his daughter's painstaking efforts and did not understand Tang Jing's character. He insisted on his opinion and said, "There is no need to talk about later. We must talk about it now. Tang Jing, you have already obtained the ancestors' Dao inheritance. This matter is not up to you." Tang Jing raised his eyebrows and said, "Senior, you are twisting words and forcing logic. Why didn't you say it clearly before and only say it after the fact? Forgive me for not being able to comply. You must clearly think about what it means to refuse." The Emperor of Heaven was furious. Tang Jing's expression did not change as he said, "I know. I do not regret it. Young man, you are still too young. Going against the Emperor of Heaven will not do you any good. Moreover, the Empyrean fairy is of great use to you. She has the 9 yin saint body and you have the 9 yang saint body. Don't you want to solve the problem of your 9 yang saint body? Marrying her will only bring you benefits and no harm." The inner demons suddenly persuaded. There was no doubt that the inner demon's words were completely reasonable in terms of benefits. However, Tang Jing was not a person who only cared about benefits. If feelings could be exchanged for benefits, then what was the point of living? He was not a cold-blooded animal, so he naturally would not agree to this. "Thank you for your good intentions, but I will not compromise." Tang Jing replied the inner demons. The inner demons chuckled, "What a stubborn temper. However, you are very similar to me in the past. I actually found myself liking you a little." In the past, who knew how many people from the inner demons had extended an olive branch to him, but he was alone in the world and did not bow to anyone. It was precisely because of this that many people saw him as a thorn in their side and wanted to eliminate him from this world. However, the heart demon was too powerful, and those people did not succeed in the end. Instead, they were led by the nose by the heart demon, and they were left in a sorry state. Seeing that Tang Jing was able to remain unyielding in the face of the inner demons felt a bit of admiration for him. Tang Jing rolled his eyes and said, "Who is like you? We are not the same kind of people." "Is that so? I feel that if you continue like this, you will definitely become like me. You will become a thorn in the side of all the powers. When the time comes, you will be hunted down." "Ha!" The inner demons mocked. "Do you think everyone is like you? I am not a loner like you. So what if I am hunted down? Why would I be afraid?" After a pause, Tang Jing expressed his thoughts. "What is the point of cultivating if you can't do as you wish after cultivating your entire life? My goal is to not lower my head, to follow my heart, and to live a carefree life." "What a carefree life!" The inner demons praised loudly. "If there is wine, I will definitely drink with you." The inner demon's praise came from the bottom of his heart. Tang Jing could hear it and couldn't help but smile. However, his smile disappeared when he saw the Emperor of Heaven's gloomy expression. The Emperor of Heaven looked at this stubborn fellow. If it were anyone else, he would have long since attacked them with a storm. However, Tang Jing's identity was not ordinary and he had inherited Fushi's will. This made him feel somewhat helpless. Their gazes met in midair, neither of them willing to lower their heads. The atmosphere was somewhat awkward and even a bit stifling. Yi Dingdang and Fang Shishir held each other's hands, their palms sweating. They were both gratified by Tang Jing's decision and lamented that they had not chosen the wrong person. However, they were also worried about Tang Jing's risky choice. What if the Emperor of Heaven wanted to deal with Tang Jing? He'd just obtained the Fushi Dao insight and hadn't even had the time to be happy when he'd encountered this problem. The ups and downs of life were truly like a roller coaster that shook one's soul and stimulated one's nerves. Chapter 1242. The Emperor of Heaven's gaze was as sharp as a knife, causing one to feel uneasy. The atmosphere was oppressive, and the air seemed to freeze. It was so cold that it made one tremble. Tang Jing met his gaze, not dodging or showing any fear. He was like a heroic martyr. "Very good," the Emperor of Heaven said in a low voice. Anyone could tell that this was not a compliment, but an intense anger that could not be suppressed. Once this anger erupted, it would definitely evolve into a war. The Empyrean fairy's heart was filled with all sorts of emotions. She was the most complicated person here. She took a deep look at Tang Jing and couldn't help but recall the scene on the Vitality Totem Mountain where she had transferred pure Yin energy to him through their mouths. Subconsciously, she definitely did not want her father to become enemies with Tang Jing. But she also understood her father's stubborn temper. Many experts had the bad habit of being obstinate and opinionated, and the Emperor of Heaven was no exception. When a person was too strong, they would have absolute confidence in themselves and would not doubt themselves. They would also not allow others to doubt or resist them. The Emperor of Heaven had it all. Tang Jing's situation was precarious. She moved her lips, preparing to mediate. She was the only one who could do this. But before she could finish speaking, her eyes widened because she had seen an inconceivable scene. The Emperor of Heaven fell backward. Bang! The Emperor of Heaven fell to the ground, his entire body convulsing. This scene scared everyone silly. They had thought that a great battle was unavoidable, but they had not expected it to turn out like this. The Emperor of Heaven was so powerful, so how could he fall? Could it be that he had been angered to the point of collapse by Tang Jing? No way. What kind of person was the Emperor of Heaven? How could he be so weak? But the scene before them was inexplicable. "Senior." Tang Jing was the first to react. He had actually prepared himself for a thunderous blow, but when he saw this scene he immediately realized that something must have happened. He hurriedly rushed over and hugged the other party. Placing his fingers on the other party's wrist, he felt that the air around him was in chaos, jumping around incessantly. How could this be? His brows furrowed as he cursed inwardly. However, before he could find a way to deal with it, his aura gradually calmed down. It was like a river, surging according to a set course. This sudden change caused Tang Jing to be flabbergasted. The Empyrean fairy also seemed to have woken up from a dream. She rushed over and asked anxiously, "What happened?" Tang Jing shook his head. He was also dumbfounded. Suddenly, his tightly shut eyes opened little by little. His eyes were filled with suspicion, and he no longer had the sharpness and aggressiveness from before. "Why are you surrounding me?" Although it was still the same voice, the aura was completely different. It had turned into Yenqingyi. Tang Jing and the Empyrean fairy were very attentive and immediately noticed the difference. They looked at each other, and the Empyrean fairy's expression became very ugly. She asked in a trembling voice, "Who are you?" "I'm Yenqingyi, of course." This person was no longer the Emperor of Heaven, but Yenqingyi herself. "Where's my father?" the Empyrean fairy asked anxiously. But no one answered her. Yenqingyi looked at her in confusion, not knowing what to do. Tang Jing helped Yenqingyi up. For a moment he was filled with emotions, and he muttered in his heart. When the others saw this dramatic scene, they were really surprised and happy. They were surprised because the change was so fast, and happy because the Emperor of Heaven was gone. This meant that there would be no conflict with Tang Jing. "What's wrong with me? I don't remember what happened at all?" Yenqingyi asked blankly. She felt even more strange when she saw that the others were looking at her with very strange eyes. Tang Jing sighed and told the truth. "You were possessed by the Emperor of Heaven just now, so you temporarily lost consciousness. The Emperor of Heaven's strength was extraordinary, so he used the method of possession instead of possession. Possession was to destroy the soul of the original owner, while possession was only to temporarily block the soul of the original owner. There was a world of difference. Possessed by the Emperor of Heaven? Yenqingyi was shocked. Could it be that the call I heard was the Emperor of Heaven's call? Before she came, she had always vowed that she heard someone calling her, so she insisted on coming to Elysium. No one answered her question. The mystery was too profound and no one could guess. The Empyrean fairy looked at Yen Qingyi in a daze and persistently asked, "Where did my father go?" Yen Qingyi looked at her blankly and resentfully said, "I don't know." Father, where did you go?" The Empyrean fairy looked like she had gone crazy. She looked all around, but there was no sign of the Emperor of Heaven. No one answered her. "Don't worry, the Emperor of Heaven's cultivation is very high, nothing will happen to him." Tang Jing patted her shoulder and comforted her. The Empyrean fairy was indeed anxious. She originally thought that she and her father would be separated forever and would never have the chance to see each other again. But the heavens played tricks on her and gave the two of them a chance to meet again. But this kind of dramatic thing happened again, which made it difficult for her to accept. "Maybe my father is still in your body." The Empyrean fairy suddenly had an idea and stared at Yen Qingyi. Yen Qingyi felt a bit uneasy under her gaze and couldn't help but look up and down at her own body. This kind of feeling wouldn't be good for anyone. Just hearing that there was another person in her body was very frightening. But she couldn't feel the existence of another soul at all, which was even more frightening. The unknown was the most frightening. Seeing Yen Qingyi's expression, Tang Jing guessed what she was thinking and gently comforted her. "Don't worry." Yen Qingyi bitterly smiled and suddenly looked up. She was attracted by another thing and couldn't take her eyes off it. Everyone curiously looked at her reaction and followed her gaze. They saw that she was staring at the statue of Fuxi. Could it be that she also saw the extraordinariness of the statue like Tang Jing? Many people muttered in their hearts and subconsciously thought of the so-called Great Tao that she had always talked about. Could it be that it was the same as what the Emperor of Heaven said, or even the same Tao? The Empyrean fairy also stopped questioning and stared blankly at her like everyone else. She also calmed down and understood that if her father's soul hadn't disappeared, then there must be a way to resurrect him. She had survived for thousands of years, so how could her soul dissipate at this time? All of Yen Qingyi's attention was firmly attracted by the statue of Fuxi, as if her soul had left her body. She moved and walked over to the statue of Fuxi. No one disturbed her, as they were all waiting to see what would happen. Her hand touched the statue, and then her eyes suddenly widened. Everyone saw a ray of light bloom in her eyes. "Ah!" someone exclaimed. Just now, when Tang Jing inherited Fuxi's Tao, there was no such phenomenon. What was she doing? At this moment, everything in her eyes disappeared, and there was only a ray of light. When the light disappeared, a person appeared in front of her. This person was exactly the same as the person that Tang Jing had seen, and they both looked like Fuxi. Fuxi walked towards her with a smile on his face and said, "You're finally here." Yen Qingyi was at a loss and asked, "Where am I? Do you know me?" "You're wholeheartedly pursuing the Tao, and you have the Tao in your heart. How could I not recognize you?" Fuxi said meaningfully. Yen Qingyi was very confused and couldn't understand what he meant. "I remember now. You're the statue that I saw." Yen Qingyi suddenly remembered what she had seen and said in shock, "That's only an appearance, or a layer of clothing. How could you be fooled by an appearance? Your eyes can see through all appearances." Fuxi said. This sentence was like a key that instantly opened a door in Yen Qingyi's heart. There was light in this door, and it instantly filled her entire body. Bathing in it, she felt that everything in front of her changed. Fuxi had disappeared, and the world was a vast expanse of whiteness. There wasn't even a single thing. "Now that you've seen through the appearance, how do you feel?" Fuxi's voice sounded again. Yen Qingyi didn't look around. She seemed to have a feeling in her heart that she didn't need to look for the other party because he was everywhere. "You're the Tao." Yen Qingyi had a kind of enlightenment in her heart, and she suddenly blurted it out. When she finished speaking, she also had a strange feeling. How could she say such words? "You've had an epiphany." Epiphany. Yen Qingyi was suddenly enlightened. She felt as if the clouds and mist had been pushed aside to see the blue sky, and a steady flow of energy flowed out from her body. "What is this?" Yen Qingyi clearly felt the situation in her body, and asked in astonishment. She had never cultivated martial arts or spells, so she was at a loss for this kind of situation. This is the Tao. You have comprehended the great Tao since you were young, and today you have finally achieved some success. Fuxi's voice seemed to be extremely ethereal, with a kind of bewitching magic. There's finally some success. Yan Qingyi muttered to herself. She had never thought that she would have such an achievement in comprehending the Tao, or rather, such benefits. Ever since she was born, she seemed to have been completely engrossed in the Tao, the great Tao of heaven and earth. Ordinary people would not be able to understand, and would even think that she was a complete weirdo. Fortunately, Yan Padian loved his youngest daughter dearly, so he let her have her way and ignored the rumors of others. Dedicating yourself to the Tao is not to make you powerless, but to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. Naturally, you have to have the corresponding ability. Enforce justice on behalf of the heavens? Yes, the people of the world have not known for too long. This kind of situation must be changed, so we need people who are focused on enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens and spreading the will of the Tao. Enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. Yan Qingyi seemed to understand, but she gradually understood in her heart, and a sense of mission arose spontaneously. I am a believer of the Tao. It is my duty to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. From today onwards, I will preach the Tao to the world. Yan Qingyi muttered to herself with a serious expression, as if she was a completely different person. The light fluctuated, and a scene appeared before her eyes. She was floating in the air, and below her were countless people kneeling and worshipping her. This scene was filled with a sense of solemnity. Yan Qingyi was like a high and mighty person, worshipped by others. Her clothes fluttered in the wind, like a legendary immortal. Chapter 1243. The scene disappeared, and Yan Qingyi saw Fuxi's statue again. Everyone else stared at her, wanting to know what had happened to her. Although it was only a short while, they felt that Yan Qingyi's aura had undergone a tremendous change. Yan Qingyi's expression was calm as she looked at them without sadness or joy. What she saw was extremely different from before. The things circulating in their bodies seemed to be especially different. Tao. Her heart stirred, and she immediately had an answer. Everyone had their own Tao. This Tao was invisible and could not be seen by outsiders. Even the person involved was not clear about it. But Yan Qingyi could clearly see other people's Tao. Tang Zheng had previously inherited Fuxi's Tao and had the same feeling. The Tao of all things in the world was evolving and circulating before his eyes. That kind of feeling was as if he was the master of the world and could control everything. Yan Qingyi's situation was even worse. However, this was extremely abnormal and even shocking to normal people. She was not surprised, as if it was natural. Because, after everything that had happened just now, it was all a matter of course. Seeing everyone looking at her as if they were looking at a monster, she said calmly, "Why are you looking at me like that? What happened to you just now?" Everyone asked all at once. Yan Qingyi said, "Nothing." "No, something must have happened to you just now. You're deliberately hiding it." The Empyrean fairy immediately pointed out the falsehood in her words. Everyone was not blind. Under everyone's gaze, that strange phenomenon could not escape anyone's eyes. Fuxi's statue was so mysterious, so how could she get away with it? Yan Qingyi looked deeply at everyone. Seeing that there was no way to let it go, she muttered to herself, "This statue has inherited my Tao." She had already had an epiphany. There were many things that she did not need to see or think about. Although she did not see the scene of Tang Zheng inheriting Fuxi's Tao, she knew about it. It sounded mysterious, but it was actually the effect of Tao. Actually, she'd intentionally concealed the truth. After she attained sudden enlightenment, what she'd obtained was far more than just Fuxi's Tao insight. It was just that she seemed to have some misgivings, or perhaps she had other thoughts that could conceal this point. However, her words still set off stormy waves in everyone's hearts. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at her in disbelief. "What? You inherited Fuxi's Tao insight?" If it was said that Tang Zheng had inherited Fuxi's Tao will, everyone was shocked, but they didn't find it too hard to accept. After all, Tang Zheng was someone who was skilled in creating miracles. He was also a celestial, and he had many other extraordinary aspects. But Yan Qingyi had inherited Fuxi's Tao insight under the gazes of everyone, and this was too inconceivable. What was the difference between Yan Qingyi and everyone else? There wasn't much of a difference between them, and it could even be said that they were still lacking compared to the others. She had never cultivated martial arts or spells. She was neither a martial artist nor a cultivator. She had no strength to truss up a chicken. Other than that mysterious prophecy technique that sometimes worked but sometimes didn't, there was no other praiseworthy thing about her. But she was luckier than the others and had inherited Fuxi's Tao insight. What was the mystery behind this? The Empyrean fairy was still questioning her earlier, but now that the other party had inherited Fuxi's Tao insight, even she didn't have the chance to question her. It was equivalent to saying that Yan Qingyi had surpassed the Empyrean fairy. The Empyrean fairy was also a member of the Fu clan. This kind of feeling only the person involved knew best. The Empyrean fairy's expression was still normal. She wasn't that narrow-minded, but the way she looked at Yan Qingyi was thought-provoking. Obviously, she was just trying to figure out what was going on. Yan Liuyun's eyes revealed a look of ecstasy. Yan Qingyi was a member of the Yan family, but she had the same treatment as Tang Zheng. Both of them had inherited Fuxi's Tao insight. This was naturally a blessing for the Yan family. No wonder the Emperor of Heaven had said earlier that it was a blessing for the Yan family to have her. Could it be that the Emperor of Heaven also knew that she could inherit Fuxi's Tao insight? Yan Luyun was obviously thinking too much. Yan Qingyi's fortuitous encounter was completely out of the Emperor of Heaven's expectations. The Emperor of Heaven's judgment was based on the fact that Yan Qingyi and the Tao were fated. This was a great fortune in the eyes of the Emperor of Heaven. However, the Emperor of Heaven still underestimated Yan Qingyi. Not only was she fated to be with the Tao, but she had been focused on comprehending the Tao since she was young. Her relationship with the Tao was not as simple as what the Emperor of Heaven thought. Yi Dingdang and Fang Shishir revealed envious expressions. This was a fortuitous encounter that everyone yearned for. Tang Jing, on the other hand, was the calmest. Although he had inherited Fuxi's Tao insight, he wasn't jealous that others had the same treatment as him. Tang Jing had thought it through very clearly. He wasn't that special. What he had, others could have. What he didn't have, others could have. If he thought too highly of himself, it wouldn't be a good thing no matter if it was cultivation or how he conducted himself. Tang Jing asked calmly, Yan Qingyi, congratulations on being fated to be with Fuxi's Tao insight. Just now, the Emperor of Heaven possessed your body. Do you know where he is now? Actually, Tang Jing didn't really care about the matter between Yan Qingyi and Fuxi's Tao insight. Instead, he was more concerned about the whereabouts of the Emperor of Heaven. The Emperor of Heaven forcing a marriage was closely related to Tang Jing. If the Emperor of Heaven insisted on this, then there would definitely be a conflict between the two. This matter was of utmost importance, so the whereabouts of the Emperor of Heaven was even more important to him. After Yan Qingyi comprehended the Tao, she understood many things clearly. She nodded without batting an eyelid and said, I know. When these words came out, it shocked everyone. No one knew the whereabouts of the Emperor of Heaven, but she actually knew. Wasn't she completely clueless before? Could it be that Fuxi's Tao insight was so powerful that it could let her know so many things? Yan Qingyi didn't hide this matter because she knew that she couldn't hide it. The Emperor of Heaven was in her body, but he was temporarily dormant. After the Emperor of Heaven's soul awakened, it wasn't strong. He also fought a tough battle and used up a lot of energy. Later, he saw that Tang Jing had inherited Fuxi's Tao insight. Other than being shocked, he was also greatly shaken. Tang Jing also rejected his arrangements and swore that he wouldn't form a relationship with the Empyrean fairy. This caused him to be in a dilemma. This series of events were like dominoes. After the last straw was pressed down, it caused a chain reaction. His soul was violently shaken. Yan Qingyi's soul actually counterattacked and took the initiative. The Emperor of Heaven himself didn't think that Yan Qingyi's soul would be so strong. He didn't think that he would fall into her hands. All of this happened in a flash. Even the Emperor of Heaven himself didn't expect it and stopped abruptly. No one expected it. But once the Emperor of Heaven's soul recuperated and recovered, he would definitely take the initiative again. At that time, everything would be exposed. There would be no point in hiding it. Instead, it would expose himself. Yan Qingyi didn't think too much about it. All of the pros and cons were clearly presented in her mind. She accurately made the decision that was most beneficial to her. All of this happened in a flash, but the mysteries revealed couldn't be explained in a few words. The others also didn't expect there to be such twists and turns. They were already completely stunned by Yan Qingyi's words. The Empyrean fairy's reaction was the biggest. She couldn't help but grab Yan Qingyi's arm and anxiously ask, "Where did my father go?" Yan Qingyi glanced at the hand grabbing her arm. The Empyrean fairy resentfully pulled back and said earnestly, "You know where my father is. Can you please tell me?" Her tone had already become very soft. Yan Qingyi nodded and said, "Of course. Your father is inside my body." If it was before, Yan Qingyi would definitely be at a loss and wouldn't know what to do. She definitely wouldn't be as calm as she was now. It was as if she was talking about someone else's business. The Empyrean fairy was relieved and revealed a happy expression. Once she knew where her father was, everything would be easy. Otherwise, where would she find a strand of his soul in such a big world? Then what will it take for my father to come out? The Empyrean fairy asked nervously. At the same time, she was faced with a dilemma. If the Emperor of Heaven came out immediately, then she would be stuck between Tang Zheng and her father. On the other hand, her longing for her father was like a torrential river, completely drowning her body and mind. He is too weak, so he is temporarily sleeping. Once he recovers, he will naturally come out. Yan Qingyi said calmly, as if she was talking about someone else's business. In this way, she would be sharing a body with heaven and earth. Others wouldn't be able to accept it, but she would be calm as if nothing had happened. The Empyrean fairy immediately understood Yan Qingyi's meaning. She also understood why her father suddenly disappeared. It was all related to what had happened before. She couldn't help but feel relieved. Since her father was sleeping, the conflict between her and Tang Jing had temporarily disappeared. She wouldn't be stuck between the two of them and be in a dilemma. Then doesn't that mean the Emperor of Heaven is sharing a body with you? Yan Luyun exclaimed, making a fuss over nothing. The others also immediately realized this point and looked at Yan Qingyi with complicated expressions. Unexpectedly, Yan Qingyi calmly nodded as if nothing had happened and said, "Yes. This feeling is too strange." Yi Dingdang blurted out without thinking. Yan Qingyi smiled unconcernedly and said, "It's all right." Hearing her say this and her reaction, it didn't seem like there was any problem. Everyone was convinced and thought that she was indeed not an ordinary person. No wonder she could inherit Fuxi's Tao intent. Tang Zheng, on the other hand, understood Yan Qingyi very well. There were many souls residing in his body, and now there was still the powerful soul of the inner demons. She was only the Emperor of Heaven. There was nothing to make a fuss about having two souls in one body. "When can I see father again?" The Empyrean fairy asked expectantly and anxiously. Yan Qingyi said mysteriously, "When the time is right, he will naturally appear." These words made the others roll their eyes helplessly. The Empyrean fairy also sighed in disappointment and said, "Understood. Then I'll wait." Yan Qingyi looked around and said, "There is a statue of Fuxi here. It contains Tao intent and is a sacred place. No outsiders can set foot here, so we must seal the Heaven's Gate." Seal the Heaven's Gate? The others looked at her strangely, not knowing why she was the one giving the order. Chapter 1244. Everyone looked at each other, unsure of how to respond to Yan Qingyi's suggestion. So many good novels. Tang Zheng looked deeply at the Fuxi statue and said thoughtfully, "Since the Fuxi statue is so important, leaving it in the Gate of Heaven will only bring more harm than good. Why don't we move it away?" Yan Qingyi and Empyrean fairy objected at the same time. Seeing the two of them speaking at the same time, the others were curious and asked, "Why not?" The two of them looked at each other and Empyrean fairy spoke first. This ancestor statue is a sacred object of the Fu clan and is very important to us. How can we move it? Yan Qingyi nodded and said, that is one of the reasons. Another important reason is that the statue has already merged with the Gate of Heaven's aura. Once the statue is moved, the Gate of Heaven's aura will change and the protective layer outside the Gate of Heaven will collapse. Anyone can enter the Gate of Heaven. The Dead Sea outside the Gate of Heaven was caused by the change in the gate's aura. It became a natural protective barrier for the Gate of Heaven. It was like a no trespassing warning sign hanging high up. Tang Zheng didn't understand and asked, without the statue, the Gate of Heaven has no other function and no protective power. What's the problem? Yan Qingyi looked at Tang Zheng meaningfully and said, although the Gate of Heaven has lost its original importance, once the statue is moved away, the aura will change and everything within a 10,000-kilometer radius will be affected by the Gate of Heaven's pure Yin energy. When that time comes, this area will become a true land of death. No living creature will be able to survive. Can you imagine how many lives will be lost? Within a 10,000-kilometer radius, not only were there underwater creatures, there were also residents on the nearby islands. On the way here, they had passed by a few islands with residents. Moreover, these islands were within the Gate of Heaven's radiation. Tang Zheng understood and nodded in agreement. That makes sense. These people were not cruel and merciless people. They would not watch as innocent people died. Then we can only seal the divine gate. Tang Zheng agreed, and the others naturally did not have any objections. Everyone exited the mysterious underground space, leaving only the statue of Fuxi standing there quietly. When they returned to the deep tunnel of the divine gate, Tang Zheng saw the corpses on the ground and turned pale with fright. What's going on? He still didn't know that a battle of life and death had taken place outside while he was rescuing people. With just a few words, they reconstructed the scene. Tang Zheng's heart immediately sank. He never thought that when he was rescuing people, they would experience such a tragic life and death battle. So many good novels. His eyes were spitting fire as he gnashed his teeth. Ji Wuxiang, you're really like a haunting ghost. You've even become so powerful. The Empyrean fairy had exchanged many moves with Ji Wuxiang, so she had the deepest impression of him. She said with a heavy heart, Ji Wuxiang has upgraded the celestial chess. His power is even greater than before. He definitely cannot be underestimated. Is that so? Tang Zheng understood the celestial chess better than anyone else, so he naturally knew how extraordinary the celestial chess was. He was extremely shocked when he heard that Ji Wuxiang had upgraded the celestial chess and could even threaten the Empyrean fairy. Looks like it's not as simple as upgrading the celestial chess. He muttered to himself thoughtfully. Hearing this, the others all looked at him worriedly. The Empyrean fairy continued, however, there's no need to worry for now. Father's words are enough to build a barrier in his heart. If he can't overcome this barrier and overcome the inner demons, then he won't be a threat. Hearing this, Tang Zheng still did not let down his guard. He understood Ji Wuxiang better than anyone else. This person was a peerless genius, and his willpower and determination were incomparable to ordinary people. It was still unknown whether the hurdle built by the Celestial Emperor could stump him. However, this was something that had yet to happen, so it was useless for him to worry about it. He calmed himself down and looked at Feng Xinyang's family. Seeing that Yi Dingdang had recovered, the family happily reunited. Even the heavily injured Yi Tanlei regained some spirit. His daughter's recovery was like a shot of adrenaline to him. The group of people walked out of the Celestial Gate together. With a rumble, the Celestial Gate closed heavily, sealing all the secrets. However, this matter was not over yet. They still had to seal the Celestial Gate. Yan Qingyi leisurely walked in front of the huge door. Looking up, she seemed extremely small. The others looked at her in surprise, not knowing what she was going to do. Everyone knew that they had to seal the Celestial Gate. They originally thought that it would be the Empyrean fairy or Tang Zheng who would do it. Could it be that Yan Qingyi was going to replace them? Tang Zheng and the Empyrean fairy looked at each other. They had noticed that Yan Qingyi's temperament and aura had changed quite a bit compared to before. They originally thought that it was because she had inherited Fuxi's Tao intent, so they did not pay too much attention to it. This was because there was neither the flow of a cultivator's true qi throughout her body, nor the circulation of a martial artist's inner strength. She was still a weak person. When they saw her standing in front of the celestial gate, the others naturally found it strange. "What are you going to do?" Tang Zheng asked directly. Yan Qingyi said without even turning her head, "Seal the celestial gate." "You can seal the celestial gate?" Tang Zheng was skeptical. The corners of Yan Qingyi's mouth curled into a mysterious smile. She did not answer and walked toward Tang Zheng's celestial gate. The others were shocked by this scene. Pairs of eyes opened wide and stared straight at her, wanting to see what she was going to do. Suddenly, she stopped in her tracks and bent down to pick up a stone, placing it in a certain spot. Everyone's expression was a bit strange. What was the use of her unusual action? It was just a few inconspicuous stones. Tang Zheng and the Empyrean fairy looked at each other. Even with their cultivation and knowledge, they could not see any clues. Tisk, interesting. The inner demon's voice suddenly sounded. Tang Zheng was shocked and hurriedly asked, "What's going on? What did you find?" The inner demons laughed and said, "I'm very curious about what Fushi's Tao intent is. It can actually change a person so much." Tang Zheng did not understand what the inner demons meant and asked, "Did you find something big?" The inner demons were not people who spoke without thinking. Hearing what he said, he must have seen some clues. Of course, who am I? How could such a little trick escape my eyes? The inner demons boasted. After a pause, the inner demons continued, "Look at the stones she placed. Did you find anything mysterious?" Tang Zheng narrowed his eyes and carefully observed, but still found nothing. "You're really stupid. Although those stones are ordinary stones, their positions are very strange. I suspect that she's setting up a large array to seal the celestial gate." The inner demons said impatiently, "Large array? She's not a cultivator. How can she set up an array?" Tang Zheng asked in confusion. The inner demon sighed and said, "It seems like you're really stupid. Tian Chanzi must have misled you. Who said that you need to be a cultivator to set up an array? Once you have the right time in the right place, an ordinary person can also set up an array. It's just that most people don't know about it. It's not so coincidental that you have the right time in the right place." "Is that so?" Tang Zheng's eyes were opened. He was really misled by Tian Chanzi. "Of course it's like that. Do you think I'm wrong?" The inner demons were indignant. They were somewhat displeased with Tang Zheng's questioning. Tang Zheng did not doubt the inner demons. He did not need to be mysterious about this kind of question. She inherited Fushi's Tao intent. She has the perfect grasp of the right time and the right place. Not to mention ordinary people, I think you're not as good. The inner demons mocked. Tang Zheng did not mind at all. He openly admitted, "I've been comprehending the Tao since I was young. Fushi's Tao intent is also the Tao of heaven and earth. It's in the same vein as the Tao she comprehended. So it's normal for her to surpass me." "You're quite open-minded. Take your time and watch. This is really getting more and more interesting." If I wasn't left with only a wisp of my soul, I would really be interested in exploring Fushi's statue. The inner demons said thought-provokingly. "You're someone who came before Fushi. Don't tell me you're still coveting his Tao intent?" Tang Zheng asked, puzzled. "You're also a cultivator. Don't you know that the new generation excels the old? Although I'm an ancient person, it's not impossible for the future generation to surpass me. Only by learning humbly can you go further." The inner demon kept on talking, as if it was really a humble and obedient student, which made Tang Zheng's jaw drop. He did not ridicule the inner demons. He was just shocked. How powerful was Fushi that he could make the inner demon's attitude change so much? While they were talking, Yan Qingyi stopped and stood quietly in front of the heavenly gate. The others looked at her in confusion. They asked, "What's going on?" Yan Qingyi did not say a word. She quietly looked at the heavenly gate. The others also gradually fell into silence and looked at the heavenly gate at the same time. But after looking at it for a long time, they still could not see anything different. Suddenly, the corners of Yan Qingyi's mouth curled up into a smile. A trace of energy surged out from the gate of heaven. Then, the ordinary stones instantly blossomed with light, and then quickly retracted. An invisible wave of energy spread out in all directions. The others looked at this change in horror. In the blink of an eye, they did not see Yan Qingyi do anything. How could such a big change happen? No one could say for sure. Tang Zheng immediately understood the problem with the array that the inner demons had mentioned. It was true that one did not have to be a cultivator to set up an array. Without a doubt, what Yan Qingyi had set up was an array. Moreover, it was a large array that could not be underestimated. Relying on the time and place, it naturally activated the large array. There was no need for anyone to be involved. As long as the heavenly gate did not fall, or the energy contained in the heavenly gate did not decline, this array would always exist. Although the heavenly bed in the heavenly gate was destroyed, it contained a lot of pure Yin energy that floated in the air and shrouded the heavenly gate. This large array relied on this energy to create a large array. The exquisiteness of the array was far from what an ordinary person could compare to. Tang Zheng had been studying arrays for some time. He could not help but feel ashamed of his inferiority. The surging energy gradually calmed down, but everything in front of his eyes had undergone a drastic change. Chapter 12:45. The scene in front of him changed. No pop-up ads, the huge divine gate had disappeared into thin air. Everything was gone, leaving only a flat ground. It was as if the gate had never existed in the first place. Illusion! Tang Zheng blurted out. He had used a similar spell before, so he blurted it out subconsciously. No! The inner demons immediately denied his judgment. The Empyrean fairy's eyes lit up. She hesitated for a moment and shook her head. It's not an illusion. Although illusions are powerful and can confuse people's vision, this is clearly not an illusion. It's as if the divine gate has really disappeared into thin air. The Empyrean fairy's vision was clearly better than Tang Zheng's. Tang Zheng was startled. His expression changed as he asked, "You're saying that the divine gate has really disappeared?" He immediately channeled his energy, trying to capture the divine gate's existence. However, he tragically found that there was no trace of it. It seemed as if the divine gate had really disappeared into thin air. The illusion only obscured people's vision. The thing was still in the same place. However, everything in front of them was the divine gate had disappeared. Not to mention Tang Zheng, even the Empyrean fairy could not compare to this kind of divine power. Hearing the two's discussion, Yan Qingyi said calmly, "With this kind of seal, ordinary people can't even get close to the divine gate. The divine gate is the safest." Is that so? Doesn't that mean we can't get close to the divine gate either? The Empyrean fairy had complicated feelings about the divine gate. Seeing that she was also cut off from the divine gate, she had mixed feelings. Yan Qingyi understood the meaning behind her words, but she was unmoved. Yes, in order to ensure the safety of the divine gate, no one can get close to it. The Empyrean fairy raised her eyebrows, and a murderous aura surged out. She asked in a stern voice, "Am I still a threat to the Elysium?" Yan Qingyi did not answer, but it was equivalent to a tacit agreement. The other people's expressions changed greatly. They didn't expect that Yan Qingyi would dare to not give face to the Empyrean fairy. The atmosphere suddenly became delicate. Tang Zheng did not expect that Yan Qingyi would suddenly become so unreasonable. She was like a completely different person from before. Could it be that a change in strength could cause such a huge change in a person? Seeing that the two of them were at each other's throats, ready to erupt at any moment, he hurriedly walked between the two of them and mediated, "Calm down, there must be a mistake in this. Qingyi, the gate of heaven is the secret ground of the Fu clan. The Empyrean fairy is the daughter of the Emperor of Heaven. How could she be a threat to the gate of heaven? You should tell her how to enter the gate of heaven." The Empyrean fairy held back her anger. Her breathing became heavier as she stared at Yan Qingyi. A good novel. If it wasn't for the fact that her father was in her body, with her temper, she would have already attacked. When Yan Qingyi heard this, he calmly looked at Tang Zheng and said with a straight face, "There is no absolute secret in this world. Once you tell a second person, then there will definitely be a third person who knows. To be on the safe side, I will not tell her. Are you doubting me? The Empyrean fairy's eyes turned red. She had never been wronged like this before. This was too much. Yen Qingyi was unmoved and said, I'm not doubting you. I'm just ensuring the safety of the gate of heaven. No one expected that Yen Qingyi would be so stubborn. In a moment, the atmosphere became even more delicate. Yen Luyun saw that the Empyrean fairy was about to explode and his heart trembled. He didn't think that his aunt would be so domineering. However, he was also very nervous. He quickly persuaded in a low voice, Aunt, we're not outsiders. Can there be an exception? Yen Qingyi looked at him indifferently and refused, No. Yen Luyun was stunned. He angrily stuck out his tongue and swallowed the rest of his words. As Yen Qingyi's relative, he also noticed that his aunt had changed a lot. She wasn't so stubborn or unreasonable before. Tang Jing let out a long sigh. He didn't think that his mediation would be useless. He helplessly looked at Yen Qingyi and was speechless. The Empyrean fairy walked step by step towards Yen Qingyi and said, Yen Qingyi, my father and you share the same body. I should be thanking you. However, your actions are too much. I can't even get close to the gate of heaven. You actually think that I'm a threat to the gate of heaven. This is a huge provocation and humiliation. I can't accept it. The Empyrean fairy spoke very clearly. She didn't hold back her anger. Yen Qingyi didn't back down at all. She stared at the Empyrean fairy and didn't say anything. However, her meaning was obvious. She definitely wouldn't let the Empyrean fairy get close to the gate of heaven. The Empyrean fairy rushed out. Her figure flashed and she was as fast as lightning. She didn't want to hurt Yen Qingyi. After all, the two of them hadn't reached a point where they had to fight to the death. She was prepared to punish Yen Qingyi properly. She wanted to teach her a lesson and let her know who was the one who could call the shots. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Yen Qingyi actually dared to go against the Empyrean fairy. If the Empyrean fairy was angry, wouldn't she be in trouble? Yen Qingyi didn't back down. Instead, she stared at the Empyrean fairy with bright eyes. The Empyrean fairy was about to hit her. Yen Qingyi gently moved to the side. Her movements were somewhat clumsy and slow. However, she narrowly avoided the Empyrean fairy's attack. At that moment, the Empyrean fairy was stunned. She didn't expect that her sure-kill attack would miss. The Empyrean fairy was very clear about her own strength. If Tang Jing had dodged her attack, she wouldn't have been so surprised. However, her opponent was Yen Qingyi, who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. The Empyrean fairy's gaze turned cold. She was certain that this was definitely a coincidence. She quickly changed her attack and moved as fast as lightning. Not to mention Yen Qingyi, even Tang Jing couldn't handle this series of changes. The Empyrean fairy was also furious. That was why her attack was so fierce. Tang Jing also saw this clearly. He wanted to stop the two of them, but was stopped by the inner demons. Don't worry about it. Although Fu Yao's attack is fierce and most people won't be able to dodge it, I don't think it will work on Yen Qingyi. Look at her expression. It's as if she's taking a stroll in the park. She doesn't seem to be panicking at all. Does this look like she's about to be at a disadvantage? The inner demon's words woke Tang Jing up. His pupils shrank as he stared straight at Yen Qingyi. Sure enough, Yen Qingyi was calm and composed. She didn't look like someone who was facing a life and death threat. She was too calm. Instead, she looked like she had victory in her hands and was full of confidence. Yen Qingyi quietly watched the Empyrean fairy's thunderous attack arrive. Suddenly, she tilted her body slightly. The attack just happened to brush past her. She wasn't hurt at all. There was a scream from the crowd. Once could be a coincidence, but twice was absolutely impossible. It could only be said that Yen Qingyi did it deliberately. The Empyrean fairy couldn't hurt her at all. That was too shocking. Who was Xian Envy of the ninth heavens, and who was Yen Qingyi? The two of them were so different. How did she manage to do all this? Huge question marks appeared in everyone's hearts. They couldn't figure out the mystery. Tang Jing and the Empyrean fairy couldn't figure it out either. Yen Qingyi's movements looked like a beginner's. They were very clumsy, but she was able to avoid the Empyrean fairy's attack. All of this was full of contradictions, But it really happened. Yan Qingyi saw the crowd's reaction. Her expression was calm. She could do all this because she had something to rely on. It could even be said that she had confidence. When the Empyrean fairy attacked her, a picture appeared in her mind. That was the location and trajectory of the Empyrean fairy's next attack. Foresight. This was what she relied on. In the past, her prophecy technique was used to predict things that would happen a long time in the future. Moreover, it was discontinuous fragments or pictures. However, ever since that incident, everything had changed drastically. The prophecy technique had changed. It couldn't immediately predict things that would happen a long time in the future. However, it could predict things that would happen in the future, and it was very accurate. Especially when she was facing a life and death crisis, she focused all her attention. Those pictures were vivid and lively, just like a movie. She used this to accurately predict the Empyrean fairy's attack path. In the world of martial arts, only speed was invincible. When she could predict the opponent's attack path first, she was in a completely invincible position. Even if she didn't have the strength to truss a chicken, she could easily avoid the Empyrean fairy's fierce attacks. This was simply a skill that defied the natural order. It was unheard of that anyone had mastered it. Yan Qingyi put it into practice and found that it was very useful. Ripples appeared in her heart. In fact, the Yan family was most worried about her safety. She rarely left the house, so her safety could be guaranteed. However, this was not because she had the ability to protect herself. There would always be regrets, and sometimes it could even be a fatal weakness. Now, Yan Qingyi had completely made up for this weakness. She was like a complete prophet. The Empyrean fairy stopped attacking, discouraged. She was a smart person. She already knew that no matter how she attacked, she couldn't really defeat her opponent. This was a strong feeling of frustration and excitement. She resisted the mixed feelings and asked in a low voice, "How did you do all this?" The others also pricked up their ears. They really wanted to know the secret behind it. How could Yan Qingyi tell the truth? She said calmly, "This is the effect of Tao insight." She pushed all the blame to Fuxi's Tao insight. Everyone knew that Fuxi's Tao insight was very profound. With so many unforeseen events, it didn't attract too much attention. The Empyrean fairy didn't give up and asked Tang Zheng, "Is what she said true?" Tang Zheng stammered and really didn't know how to answer. In the end, he said helplessly, "In any case, I don't have her ability." Tang Zheng couldn't see through Yan Qingyi at all. However, there was one thing that he was sure of. Although he had inherited Fuxi's Tao insight, he would be hard-pressed to deal with the Empyrean fairy's sharp attacks. He wouldn't be as relaxed as Yan Qingyi, as if nothing mattered. After hearing Tang Zheng's answer, the Empyrean fairy asked with a livid expression, "Did you hear that?" Yan Qingyi was unmoved and said indifferently, "Everyone's situation is different. Fuxi's Tao insight is extraordinary and has many miraculous aspects. What's there to be surprised about?" Chapter 1246. No matter how conflicted the Empyrean fairy was, or how suspicious the others were, if Yan Qingyi didn't reveal the truth, the others couldn't force her. They looked at her resentfully with mixed feelings. Yan Qingyi looked at the Empyrean fairy and said, "Don't worry, your father is still in my body. What's the point of worrying about the gate of heaven?" The Empyrean fairy looked at her in a daze, her gaze fluctuating. In the end, she had no choice but to give up. Although her cultivation was high, there were times when she couldn't do anything. Tang Zheng didn't have the intention to get to the bottom of the matter. Seeing both sides compromise, he was relieved. The few of them returned along the original path. Looking at the messy pile of rocks, they couldn't help but think of the giant stone man. Without a doubt, this was the effect of the pure Yin energy in the gate of heaven, just like the sea of death around them. But when they returned to the disembarkation point, they found that the ship had been reduced to pieces, scattered all over the ground. "Our ship!" Yan Luyun was the first to cry out in alarm. He rushed over in a big stride, only to see a scene of devastation. "Where are the crew members?" He cried out in alarm. The crew members were all elites that he had carefully selected. If they were sacrificed, he couldn't absolve himself from the blame. The others' expressions changed greatly. If so many people died because of them, no one would feel good. Without a doubt, all of this was done by Ji Wuxiang. He didn't manage to obtain the secret of the gate of heaven, but he did this to a group of innocent people. He was simply heartless. Young Master Yen. Suddenly, a voice pulled everyone back from their anger. They saw a group of people walking out from behind the reef in the distance, trembling in fear. Captain! Yen Liuyun's pupils shrank. He was pleasantly surprised. He recognized the captain at the front at a glance, as well as the other familiar faces of the crew members. The captain was scared. He patted his chest and said, "Young Master Yen, you're finally here. You really scared us to death." Although he had already guessed it, Yen Luyun couldn't help but ask, "What happened?" The crew members tried to reconstruct the scene at that time. It turned out that after they left and entered the Divine Gate, the crew members stayed on the ship. The dangers of Elysium were unpredictable. After the number of people increased, there were many unknowns. Moreover, the crew members were ordinary people. If they saw too many magical things, it would not do them any good. Instead, it would easily cause trouble. In the end, they unanimously decided to leave the crew behind and wait for their return on the shore of the Divine Gate. He never expected that the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Not long after they disembarked, Ji Wuxiang's ship arrived. When the captain saw the ship from afar, he immediately realized that something was wrong. All the ships in the Sea of Death were evil. They didn't have the abilities of Tang Zheng and the rest, so they naturally didn't dare to face them head-on. Therefore, the captain made a prompt decision and led the crew to abandon the ship and hide. Fortunately, the captain was wise enough. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for him to escape from Ji Wuxiang's evil hands. When Ji Wuxiang reached the shore, he sent people to search the ship. When he didn't see anyone, he immediately destroyed the ship. The crew members watched from afar. They were powerless and didn't dare to rush out to resist. They were all ordinary people. How could they be a match for this group of martial artists? Hearing this series of events, the crowd was excited. Yen Lun patted the captain's shoulder and said, "You did well. Don't go head-to-head with that group of people. The key is to protect yourself." "But our ship is destroyed. There's no way to go back." The captain blamed himself in shame. Yen Luyun sighed. He also knew the current predicament. Without a ship, it was a big problem for so many people to return. He had no choice but to look at Tang Zheng and the rest. Tang Zheng read his eyes and comforted him, "Everyone, don't worry. Although this is an isolated island and there are no ships, it won't be a problem for us." Hearing this, the crew members were greatly encouraged. Their eyes bloomed with the light of hope. Empyrean Fairy also didn't put this so-called problem in her eyes. She turned her head and looked in the direction of the gate of heaven. But there was nothing there. However, there was still a problem. Without a ship, it wouldn't be easy for these dozens of people to leave safely. Yi Dingdang asked in a low voice, "What should we do?" "I'll go find a ship. I'll leave this sea area. I'll find a ship." Tang Zheng volunteered. There was no other way. This was the only way. "Then you have to be careful. Ji Wuxiang and those people are too cunning. Don't ambush us outside and wait for us to walk into their trap." Fang Shishir was very careful and warned. Tang Zheng smiled and didn't take it to heart. He was about to wade into the water and leave when he heard a crew member cry out in alarm. "It's high tide." Pairs of eyes uniformly looked toward the shore. Sure enough, the sea level was rising, and it was rising at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon it would reach their feet. What's going on? Is this island going to be submerged? They couldn't help but recall the previous scene. This island had rushed out from the bottom of the sea. It was definitely time for the island to sink again. If that was the case, where would they have time to find a ship? By the time they found it, they would have already become ghosts under the water. Hurry up and think of a way. The island is about to sink. The crew members cried out in alarm, urging Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng frowned. He was certain that the island would definitely sink, and it would happen very quickly. If he didn't think of a way, these people would really suffer. Empyrean Fairy turned her head and looked at him, saying, "Your Sumeru world can accommodate them. What's there to be afraid of?" Tang Zheng obviously knew this, but there were many secrets hidden in Sumeru world. One of them was the Shura. Forget it. In order to save people, this is the only way. Moreover, I've already divided Sumeru world into several regions that don't interfere with each other. Taking them in won't be too dangerous. Seeing the water rise faster and faster, Tang Zheng knew that he couldn't delay any longer. He hurriedly said, "Don't worry, I'll take you out of here safely." With that, he waved his hand and a light flashed from his wrist. Sumeru world displayed its might and absorbed the crew into Sumeru world in the blink of an eye. The others weren't surprised. On the contrary, they looked at his wrist expectantly. They also wanted to enter Sumeru world to investigate. "Just in case you guys go in as well." Tang Jing said, "I don't need it." Empyrean Fairy and Yen Qingyi said in unison. Tang Jing didn't force them. The others all agreed. Although Yi Dingdang was restless and wanted to stay outside, she was still rejected by Tang Jing. With a flash of light, the others disappeared. Only Tang Jing, Empyrean Fairy and Yen Qingyi were left on the island. Empyrean Fairy looked thoughtfully at Yen Qingyi. She really couldn't guess how she would get through this crisis. "What are you going to do?" Tang Jing directly asked. Yen Qingyi didn't answer. She strolled into the sea. The sea water submerged the soles of her shoes, but it didn't continue to rise. She actually stopped steadily on the surface of the sea, like a leaf, floating lightly. Tang Zheng and Empyrean Fairy looked at each other, full of suspicion. Yen Qingyi didn't have inner strength or qi. How did she do this? How did she counteract her own gravity? "How did you do it?" Tang Zheng asked in surprise. Yen Qingyi said calmly, "The sea has its own Tao. If I follow the Tao, I will naturally be able to do this." Tang Zheng and Empyrean Fairy frowned at the same time. These words were too mysterious. It was like the words of a charlatan. "I think your gains from inheriting the ancestors' Tao are much lower than hers." Empyrean Fairy ridiculed. Tang Jing smiled bitterly and helplessly. "Let's go quickly. The sea will soon submerge the island." Yen Qingyi urged. Tang Zheng and Empyrean Fairy also walked into the sea. Like Yen Qingyi, the sea water couldn't submerge the soles of their shoes. Rumble! A loud sound came from the island. They looked over at the same time and saw the island sink quickly. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace. Empyrean Fairy never thought that the Heaven's Gate would undergo such a huge change. She asked worriedly, "When will the Heaven's Gate resurface?" "When the time is right, it will naturally reappear in the world." Yen Qingyi was tactful again. Empyrean Fairy rolled her eyes helplessly. She couldn't be bothered to say anything. In any case, it was a waste of saliva. Tang Jing shook his head and smiled bitterly as he looked at the two of them. The person who obtained the greatest gains on this trip was probably Yen Qingyi. No wonder she insisted on going together. Yen Qingyi had cooperated with Tang Jing many times. She was also a member of the Yen family, so she was a friend and not a foe. Tang Jing wasn't jealous. Instead, he was sincerely happy for her. The three of them waded through the water as if they were walking on flat ground. There were no more ships on the sea, not even those mysterious ships. They safely left the Sea of Death. The sun in the distance was very dazzling. Although it was only a step away from the sea, it gave off a completely different feeling. It was like another world, incomparably warm, completely different from the gloomy coldness of the Sea of Death. The Sea of Death is so mysterious. How will we find it in the future? Tang Jing asked worriedly. The Sea of Death was erratic. Although many ships tried their best to avoid it, sometimes they would accidentally intrude. For those who wanted to lock onto the Sea of Death, this characteristic was especially fatal. If they came again in the future, they might not be able to find it. Yen Qingyi wasn't worried at all. She said confidently, "Although the Sea of Death is erratic, the core area of the Heaven's Gate is still there. It's just that other people don't know about it, so there's no need to worry." Tang Jing suddenly understood. Empyrean Fairy glared at Yen Qingyi with mixed feelings and said, "Even without her, I can bring you to find the Heaven's Gate again." Obviously, The two of them were fighting openly and covertly. In Sumer world, the sky was overcast and the surroundings were quiet. Many people were curiously sizing up their surroundings. In particular, the crew looked as if they were looking at a zoetrope. However, they remembered Tang Zheng's instructions and didn't dare to move around carelessly. In view of Tang Zheng's abilities, they were all in awe and didn't dare to act rashly. Suddenly, Chapter 1247. The pair of eyes stared fixedly at the group of people, but they were completely oblivious. They were still immersed in the shock of Sumer world. A strong gust of wind blew as a person rushed into the crowd. Like a wolf in a flock of sheep, everyone was thrown off their feet. Before they could react, they heard a cry of alarm and stopped abruptly. "Who is it?" The others cried out. They looked around and saw that one of their companions had fallen into the enemy's hands. Fang Shishir gritted her teeth, her eyes red. Although she couldn't see who it was, she was already under control. Just as the enemy was about to reach her, she sensed something strange. But before she could react, the enemy had already restrained her. The speed was as fast as lightning. The others looked at this scene and felt helpless. Yi Dingdang had a fiery temper. Seeing Fang Shishir being captured, she flew into a rage. "Who are you? Let go of Shishir." The enemy hid behind Fang Shishir and didn't show his face. At the same time, Yi Dingdang and Fang Shishir muttered in their hearts. This was Sumer world, a place under Tang Zheng's control. It should be an absolutely safe place. Why would an enemy suddenly appear? Hey, how could I let her go? She is Tang Zheng's most precious treasure and my most important bargaining chip. A voice rang out, as if a sinister plan had succeeded. This voice was so familiar. Fang Shishir and Yi Dingdang had the same thought. Suddenly, they looked at each other and shouted in unison, "Xian Yin." This person was indeed Xian Yin. Her intelligence had been awakened by the Ksitigarbha Sutra and she had returned to normal. The two suddenly remembered that after Xian Yin became mentally retarded, she was taken into Sumer world by Tang Zheng. Unexpectedly, she had unknowingly regained her intelligence and seized this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to capture Fang Shishir. Fang Shishir was Tang Zheng's reverse scale and also his Achilles heel. With Xuanyin's intelligence, how could she not know this? Therefore, her hunting target was very clear. Of course, Yi Dingdang was also an important person to Tang Zheng, but Yi Dingdang was further away from her. To ensure that nothing went wrong, she chose to attack the person closest to her. "Xian Yin, you actually dare to act rashly? Are you not afraid of death?" Yi Dingdang asked hysterically. She was both anxious and angry in her heart. Xian Yin was a vicious and merciless person. If Fang Shishir were to meet with any mishap in her hands and she could only watch helplessly as it happened, she could not imagine what would happen. She would probably spend the rest of her life in pain and self-blame. In addition, Tang Zheng would be in even more pain. This was because he was the one who had indirectly caused all of this. Back then he had deliberately left Xian Yin alive in hopes that one day, he would be able to learn more about the realm beyond heaven from her. However, man proposes, God disposes. Tang Zheng would never have dreamed that this would happen. Hearing Yi Dingdang's question, Xian Yin curled her lips and said disdainfully, "Of course I'm afraid of death." Tang Zheng was certain of this from the beginning. "It's precisely because I'm afraid of death that I won't let go. She is the key to my escape." Sumer Heavens was controlled by Tang Zheng and was an extremely powerful magic treasure. Without Tang Zheng's control, she would not be able to break out of its shackles. Originally, when she had regained her consciousness, she had been trying to figure out a way to escape. She did not expect that someone would send her a pillow just as she was about to sleep. Although she had been isolated by Tang Zheng in another area, she had caught the fluctuations of magic power when these people entered Sumer Heavens. She quietly chased after them and found this group of people. She waited for an opportunity to make a move, and struck them in one strike. Fang Shishir could not see Xian Yin and could not turn her head. She could only ask with an ashen face, "Xian Yin, you can't escape. Don't waste time." "Is that so? Why do you have so little confidence in yourself?" I believe that Tang Zheng is willing to do anything for you, even sacrificing his own life. How could he watch you get hurt and not do anything? When the time comes, letting me go will be a trivial matter. I believe that he will make the right decision. Xian Yin was all smiles as she analyzed the situation logically. Obviously, she understood Fang Shishir's position in Tang Zheng's heart. She also understood Tang Zheng's character. He was definitely a person who valued friendship and righteousness. Fang Shishir and Yi Dingdong's hearts dimmed. They had to admit that Xian Yin was right. Seeing that they were speechless, Xian Yin laughed proudly. Now you understand my confidence? The scene fell into silence. Everyone looked at this scene dumbfoundedly. They did not understand who this person who had suddenly appeared was. Xian Yin did not want to delay any longer, so she decisively shouted, Tang Zheng, don't be a coward. Come out, or your beloved woman will say goodbye to you forever. Tang Zheng and the other two were originally strolling leisurely on the surface of the sea when suddenly, Tang Zheng's heart trembled and he subconsciously stopped in his tracks. His expression suddenly changed as his attention was completely focused on Sumi Tianxia. He sensed the movement in Sumi Tianxia and heard Xian Yin's words. His heart sank, as if he had been dragged into a bottomless abyss by a boulder. Empyrean Fairy and Yen Qingyi immediately noticed his abnormality. Seeing his pale face, they realized that something was wrong. What's wrong? Tang Jing did not have time to answer. His mind was completely occupied by Sumi Tianxia. When he saw Xian Yin holding Fang Shishir hostage, his body shook violently and he almost fell to the ground. Xian Yin, how did you recover your intelligence? Hearing Tang Zheng's question, Xian Yin smiled coldly. Are you surprised? Actually, I'm very surprised too. How did you do it? It seems that your recitation of the Ksitigarbha Sutra awakened my intelligence. So, it's all thanks to you. Xian Yin said proudly. Tang Zheng's expression changed. He did not refute because he knew that this was the only explanation. The Ksitigarbha Sutra was not only useful to Azura, but also to Xian Yin. He even forgot that there was such a big scourge hidden in Sumi Tianxia. Tang Zheng, let's not talk about these useless things. Hurry up and let me out. Then I'll let your woman go. If not, at worst we'll fight to the death. If I don't live, she won't live either. Xian Yin's goal was clear and her methods were ruthless. Tang Zheng believed that if he stubbornly insisted on attacking, Xian Yin would not hesitate to kill him. He didn't care about Xian Yin's life, but he couldn't help but care about Fang Shishir's life. Let her go and I will also let you go. Tang Zheng gnashed his teeth. His anger had reached its peak, as if the flames of anger were about to burst out from his head. Xian Yin naturally felt his anger. The angrier he was, the more important Fang Shishir was, and the greater her chances of regaining her freedom. Although she knew that Tang Zheng was a man who kept his promises, she did not accept his offer. Because she did not want to take the risk. She had already touched Tang Zheng's reverse scale. Tang Zheng's actions could not be judged by common sense. She had to ensure that nothing went wrong. She would not have a second chance. She believed that once she failed, Tang Zheng would no longer think of obtaining any more information about the sky beyond heaven from her mouth, and would instead kill her cleanly. No, I have to make sure that I'm safe before I release your little lover. Xian Yin shook her head. Tang Zheng's voice trembled. It was easy to imagine the mix of worry and anger in his heart. You're playing with fire. You're courting death. Tang Zheng said fiercely. I've always been playing with fire, but the fire always burns others. I'm safe and sound. Xian Yin said proudly. Then you're asking for trouble this time. Xian Yin was unmoved. I know that Sumi world is your territory. If I delay for even a minute, then I'll be in more danger. There's no point in talking to you. Let me out quickly. I'll count to 3. If you don't let me go, then I'll just wait for her to die with me. Tang Zheng, don't listen to her. Don't let her go. Letting a tiger go back to the mountains is too big a threat. I don't care. A life for a life. To be able to exchange the life of an expert like her is worth it. Fang Shishir shouted righteously, like a martyr. Don't. Tang Zheng shouted to stop her. Your life is 1,000 times more important than hers. She's not worth that much. Shishir, Don't worry. I'll definitely save you. Ha, so moving. You make me cry. But I don't want to wait any longer. Xian Yin's expression was a bit ugly. Her position in the Azure Dragon Hall was quite high. She had been able to call the wind and summon the rain for generations. She was a high and mighty existence. But Tang Jing said that Fang Shishi's life was 1,000 times more important than hers. To her, this was absolutely heinous ridicule and provocation. Her face was ashen as she said, 1, 2. Don't. Tang Jing turned pale with fright. With a thought, Xian Yin and Fang Shishi left Sumi World and appeared on the surface of the sea. The sky was high and the sea was wide. The clouds were light and the wind was light. Xian Yin breathed in the salty sea breeze, feeling refreshed. Her eyes were shining as she greedily looked at everything. Only now did she understand the pain of losing her freedom. She secretly warned herself that she would never suffer the same pain again. Empyrean Fairy and Yan Qingyi had been quietly looking at Tang Jing. Although he didn't say a word, they had already realized that something was wrong. But since they didn't know the details, they couldn't help. They could only wait and see. When they saw Sumi World suddenly flash and 2 people appear on the surface of the sea and look at them from a distance, they immediately realized the crux of the problem. There was danger in Sumi World, and even Fang Shishi was kidnapped. No wonder Tang Jing's reaction was so strange. After seeing Xian Yin's appearance, Empyrean Fairy blurted out, "Xian Yin, why are you here?" Empyrean Fairy didn't take Xian Yin seriously at all, thinking that it was already a thing of the past. Chapter 1248. Xian Yin looked at the Empyrean Fairy from afar. Empyrean Fairy, you've teamed up with Tang Jing to deal with me and imprison me for so long. Now I'm finally going to regain my freedom. The Empyrean Fairy snorted. Stop dreaming. Do you think I'll release a tiger back into the mountains and let you do as you wish? Xian Yin glanced at Tang Jing. So what if you don't agree? He'll agree. The 9 Heavens mystical maiden turned her head to look at Tang Jing and saw that his eyes were red as if he wanted to eat someone. Her heart trembled as she said, he might care about Fang Shishi, but I might not. She said this to confuse Xian Yin. Xian Yin didn't fall for it. Then see if Tang Jing will agree. I'm sure he'll become my best bodyguard if you make a move. The Empyrean Fairy sighed inwardly. She had to admit that Xian Yin had grasped Tang Jing's weakness. Otherwise, she would become Tang Jing's enemy. For a woman, Tang Jing would be willing to make an enemy out of anyone. He was the type who preferred beauty over power. The Empyrean Fairy knew this and felt a deep sense of helplessness. Tang Jing's face was gloomy. I've already released you from Sumeru World. You should let Shishi go now. Of course I'll let her go, but not now. You 2 experts are attacking me. If I let her go, I'll lose my bargaining chip. How can I guarantee that I won't be imprisoned again? Xian Yin spoke without stopping. She was well aware of her situation. Tang Jing flew into a rage. You're going back on your word. When did I go back on my word? I only said I'll let her go, I didn't say when. Xian Yin shrugged. She wasn't afraid of Tang Jing's anger at all. Tang Jing gritted his teeth. He was filled with anger but had nowhere to vent it. Then what do you want me to do to release Shishi? I will take her away. Once I ensure my own safety, I will naturally let her go. Tang Jing, without hesitation, rejected the idea. Xian Yin was a vicious and merciless person and didn't have much credibility. If she really captured Fang Shishi, it was uncertain whether she would let her go. Moreover, he couldn't control what harm Fang Shishi would suffer. Therefore, he would never allow Fang Shishi to leave his sight. I'm not negotiating with you, Xian Yin retorted. You don't have a choice. Xuan Yin's toughness was unexpected. Tang Jing was in a dilemma. If he attacked, Fang Shishi might be injured. If he let the enemy leave, Fang Shishi might have a chance to survive, but he couldn't guarantee it. Tang Jing wasn't a stupid person. He immediately made a decision. Xian Yin was smug. She thought that she had grasped Tang Jing's Achilles heel. This time, she was bound to succeed. Tang Jing glanced at Fang Shishi. Their eyes met and an invisible message was transmitted to each other. The Empyrean fairy and Tang Jing already had a tacit understanding. A simple glance was enough to convey enough information. Do it. Tang Jing roared and launched a thunderous attack. The Empyrean fairy attacked at the same time. The two rose and rushed toward Xian Yin like a gust of wind. Xian Yin's eyes widened. She looked at the scene in disbelief. She thought that victory was in her hands. She didn't expect that Tang Jing would act rashly without caring about Fang Shishir's safety. Xian Yin thought that she knew Tang Jing well, but in fact she didn't. She only knew a little. Fang Shishir was indeed Tang Jing's Achilles' heel. It was precisely because of this that Tang Jing couldn't watch her be taken away. If she was taken away, he would lose control completely. He couldn't accept losing control. Therefore, he would rather take action and fight for that glimmer of hope with a thunderous attack than give the initiative to Xian Yin. Empyrean Fairy also knew this. So when she saw Tang Jing's eyes, she knew what he was thinking. The two suddenly attacked. Xian Yin didn't expect this and hurriedly retreated. Fang Shishir staggered backward. Bang! A cold light flew out and accurately hit Xian Yin's shoulder. Blood splattered and her shoulder immediately collapsed. Xian Yin let out a muffled groan as her face turned deathly pale. However, she still endured the pain and did not let go. She knew that once she let go, her life would come to an end. Her eyes turned cold and murderous. She stared at Tang Jing, who had rushed in front of her. Tang Jing's eyes turned red. He was extremely angry. A cold light appeared again and attacked her head. Xian Yin didn't have time to think. She moved her wrist and Fang Shishir met the cold light head-on. In this life and death situation, she directly used Fang Shishir as a human shield. Fang Shishir was helpless. She could only watch as the attack reached her. Tang Jing felt a chill and suddenly withdrew his attack. At this time, a cold light pierced through Fang Shishir's ribs and shot towards Tang Jing's chest. Bang! The sacred armor shield flashed and blocked the attack. But Tang Jing couldn't help but quickly retreat and put some distance between him and Xian Yin. This attack injured Xian Yin and forced Tang Jing to retreat. He still couldn't take back Fang Shishir from Xian Yin. It was a failure. Empyrean Fairy's attack was like a shadow, attacking Xian Yin's side from the other side. Xian Yin was struggling. She had just forced Tang Jing to retreat and now she had to deal with Empyrean Fairy. Empyrean Fairy's attack was more powerful than Tang Jing's. Xian Yin tried to use Fang Shishir as a human shield again. But the light seemed to have eyes. It changed directions and avoided Fang Shishir, hitting Xian Yin's leg. Blood splattered. Xian Yin's left leg was covered in blood. The blood flowed into the sea and turned it red. Xian Yin's forehead was covered in sweat. Her heart was filled with sorrow. Wasn't she confident in her victory? How did it become like this? This guy didn't play by the rules at all, disrupting all of her plans. Empyrean Fairy couldn't help but feel sad when she saw that she couldn't kill Xian Yin in one hit. If she couldn't succeed in one hit, it would be a failure. Xian Yin couldn't care less about the pain. She hurriedly retreated. Her body was dyed red with blood. She also knew that if she could resist the opponent's sudden attack, she would win. She had indeed won. Tang Jing tried to launch a second round of attacks, but Xian Yin was already holding a gleaming sword. She placed it on Fang Shishir's neck. Even a god wouldn't be able to save her if she made a light cut. Don't move! Xian Yin roared fiercely. Tang Jing, you've really exceeded my expectations. You actually dared to attack without caring about her safety. I'll let you know the price of your actions. As soon as she finished speaking, a line of blood appeared on Fang Shishir's fair neck. A trace of blood flowed down her porcelain-like neck. Stop! Tang Jing turned pale with fright. He stretched out his hand and shouted. Xian Yin stopped. She was only trying to intimidate Tang Jing. She wouldn't really kill Fang Shishir. Fang Shishir was injured, but she didn't bat an eyelid. Instead, she shouted, Xian Yin, kill me if you can. Xian Yin laughed sinisterly. Oof, I won't kill you. You're my bargaining chip. She paused for a moment, then said to Tang Jing, now you know my determination. If you dare to pressure her again, she'll definitely die. Fine, I won't make a move. Tang Zheng gritted his teeth and fiercely stared at the ninth heaven mystical maiden as he helplessly said, Sure, don't worry. I'll definitely save you. Even if I have to chase her to the ends of the earth, I'll save you. If she really dares to kill you, I'll make her beg for death. Tang Zheng threatened. I don't doubt your determination. Xian Yin said. I just want to escape. I don't want to kill anyone. Don't force me and we'll be fine. I'm leaving now. Don't chase after me. Otherwise, you'll be deliberately forcing her to her death. Faced with this overbearing condition, Tang Zheng had no choice but to accept. Empyrean Fairy sighed inwardly. There was nothing she could do. Xian Yin seemed to have seen the hope of victory. She retreated step by step. Because she was injured, her feet were submerged in the sea. From this, it was clear that she had used up a lot of energy. If she lost the hostage, she wouldn't be a match for Tang Zheng and the others. Yan Qingyi watched all this quietly like a bystander. She didn't move at all. Even her eyes didn't move. Xian Yin was afraid that Tang Zheng would make things difficult for her again, so she didn't dare to turn around and leave. Instead, she retreated step by step, hoping to put as much distance between them as possible before turning around to escape. She retreated in the direction of Yan Qingyi. Yan Qingyi stood quietly on the surface of the sea. It was as if she had become one with the sea, not making a sound. Xian Yin sensed that there was someone behind her. She had also seen Yan Qingyi earlier. Although she was floating on the surface of the sea, she subconsciously thought that it was Tang Zheng's magic. Most importantly, Yan Qingyi did not have any inner strength or true qi fluctuations. She was no different from a normal person. Therefore, Xian Yin treated her as a normal person and did not take her seriously. In her eyes, Yan Qingyi was just like an ordinary person who had been scared silly by the scene just now. Xian Yin finally retreated to Xian Yin's side. The two of them were a meter apart. To an ordinary person, this distance wouldn't be a threat to Xian Yin. Even a strong cultivator with a certain level of strength wouldn't be able to threaten her. Xian Yin knew that if she retreated a little more, she would be safe. She would then take Fang Shishir and fly far away. Just as she was about to miss Yan Qingyi, she inadvertently glanced out of the corner of her eye and suddenly realized that Yan Qingyi had disappeared. Before she had time to figure out what was going on, she sensed that there was an extra person behind her. She was shocked and cried out in alarm. Her whole body was on full alert, but she was still a step too late. A soft palm hit her elbow joint. It was an extremely clever move. Her wrist tilted and the long sword moved away from Fang Shishir's neck. Fang Shishir wasn't an ordinary person either. She accurately grasped this crucial flaw and with a slip of her feet, she rushed forward and completely escaped from Xian Yin's control. Xian Yin was shocked and angry. She turned her head slightly and saw Yan Qingyi's calm eyes. Yan Qingyi looked at her indifferently as if she was looking at an extremely ordinary person. It was as if in her eyes, Xian Yin wasn't a huge threat at all. Xian Yin had lost her hostage and it was impossible to get her back. Only this person in front of her could become the new hostage. Chapter 1249. Xian Yin tried to grab Yan Qingyi, but it was too late for the others to save her. Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy were not in a hurry to save her. They were sure that Yan Qingyi would be able to dodge her attack. As expected, Yan Qingyi dodged Xian Yin's attack by a hair's breadth, causing Xian Yin to miss. Xian Yin staggered and almost fell down. She was battered and exhausted. She stared at Yan Qingyi in shock and anger and asked, "How did you do it?" As soon as she finished asking, she rushed out again. This time, she was determined to catch Yan Qingyi. Her desperate struggle did not yield any results. In addition, no one else came to stop her. This made her very puzzled. Shouldn't Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy stop her? Otherwise, if Yan Qingyi fell into her hands, wouldn't his hands and feet be tied? Before she could figure out this problem, she found that her big hand had grabbed empty air again. Yan Qingyi was standing to the side, looking at her calmly. Her eyes were full of ridicule, as if she was looking at a fool. Xian Yin's heart thumped as an ominous premonition arose. The other party could escape from her hands twice, and it was definitely not by luck. That meant that she was not as simple as she looked. What should she do? Xian Yin was burning with anxiety. Her 2 attacks had failed, so it was impossible for her to catch Yan Qingyi again. Sure enough, reality confirmed her guess. The Empyrean fairy rushed over with a whoosh. Tang Jing joined Fang Shishir and hugged her waist tightly. He said with lingering fear, "It's good that you're okay, it's good that you're okay." Looking at the thin line of blood on her neck, he grimaced in pain. Seeing him like this, Fang Shishir laughed involuntarily. "Don't worry about me, it's just a flesh wound. I'm fine." Although he knew that this sentence was true, Tang Jing still blamed himself and said, "I didn't protect you well. It's my fault." Fang Shishir shook her head and said, "It's not your fault. No one would have expected this." When Tang Jing heard this, he felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on his heart. He shielded Fang Shishir behind him and glared fiercely at Xian Yin. The Empyrean fairy had already arrived in front of Xian Yin. Xian Yin had no choice but to face the enemy in a panic. Bang bang bang. On the surface of the sea, the 2 figures moved erratically as they fought fiercely. Xian Yin had just recovered, and she had suffered 2 heavy blows in a row. Her strength had already been greatly depleted, so how could she be a match for the Empyrean fairy? The painting of mountains and rivers of the gods of Vale expanded in the wind and completely enveloped Xuanin's head. Wind, rain, thunder, and lightning came unexpectedly. Xian Yin shrieked as a yellow light flashed in her hand and a small bell flew into the air. There was a crack in the middle of the bell, a mark left behind from her battle with Tang Jing. The bell was originally a sacred weapon, but its power had been greatly reduced because of this. Xian Yin didn't have time to repair the bell, so she had to use it again in this life and death situation. Ding ling ling. The bell suddenly rang out, and the demonic sound spread rapidly in all directions like water waves. In an instant, everyone present was affected. Tang Jing had fought with Xian Yin several times and had figured out her tactics. He hurriedly warned, "Be careful, this demonic sound is a spiritual attack that can attack one's mind and bewitch one's heart." This warning was like a wake-up call. Everyone's spirits were lifted, and they quickly gathered their thoughts and focused 120% of their attention. However, the demonic sound was still pervasive and quickly drilled into everyone's ears. They were all startled and their movements became much slower. Xian Yin didn't follow up with another attack. Instead, she took advantage of her opponent's carelessness and turned to flee. "Stop!" Empyrean Fairy's eyes were like torches as she firmly locked onto Xian Yin's back. With a point of her finger, the mountain river map quickly chased after her. Wind, rain, thunder, and lightning came unexpectedly and attacked Xian Yin's back fiercely. Ding ling ling. The demonic sound became more and more intense. A yellow light rose from the bell and transformed into the shape of a bell, covering Xian Yin's body. The wind, rain, thunder, and lightning attacks fell on the light shield. Crack! The light barrier collapsed and shattered into pieces. However, Xian Yin, who was inside it, was safe and sound. She took this opportunity to flee a long distance. Fortunately, they were on the surface of the sea and could see the horizon at a glance. Xian Yin had nowhere to hide. If they were in the mountains, she would have escaped in such a situation. Everyone knew this. However, they also knew that if they let Xian Yin escape for a while longer, she could sink to the bottom of the sea and find a chance to slip away. Practitioners were not fish. Although they could survive temporarily at the bottom of the sea, they couldn't survive forever. After all, they had to breathe. Unless there was no other choice, Xian Yin would not rashly sink to the bottom of the sea. Demonic Sound's attack was very powerful. Even Yan Qingyi frowned, apparently silently resisting Demonic Sound. The strength she had previously displayed was frightening, but Demonic Sound was still effective against her. Tang Zheng also noticed this and instantly understood that the strength of mental attacks was beyond imagination. Xian Yin could dodge physical attacks, but she couldn't avoid mental attacks. Seeing that Xian Yin was about to escape, Tang Zheng couldn't sit idly by and said, Sure, be careful. I'll deal with her." After saying that, he rushed out. He wasn't afraid of demonic sound's attack because his mental strength was very strong. In addition, he also had the unique skill, mind manipulation, taught by the inner demons. Mind manipulation was a very powerful mental attack. It was many times stronger than demonic sound's attack. Using mental attacks in front of the inner demons was like displaying one's slight skill in front of an expert. She was asking for humiliation. Seeing Tang Jing rushing over, Xian Yi knew that things weren't going well. She had experienced Tang Jing's mind manipulation before. It was her fatal nemesis. Therefore, she didn't even look back. She used all her strength and ran as fast as she could. However, Tang Jing's speed wasn't slow either. He was getting closer and closer to her. Her eyes were filled with despair, but she didn't give up. With a splash, she rushed into the sea and swam towards the depths of the sea. Her speed was faster than a fish's. Competing with me in diving is asking for humiliation. Tang Jing snorted. With a splash, he also dived into the sea. As soon as he entered the water, he activated the Dragon God technique. A golden light overflowed from his body and enveloped him. Draconic chi and draconic might erupted. In an instant, he seemed to have turned into a swimming dragon. He was like a fish in water. He wasn't afraid of the sea at all. Instead, the sea helped him move forward. After Tang Jing cultivated the Dragon God's secret art, his body had undergone a subtle change, especially in the sea. This point was completely displayed. He could breathe freely and wasn't afraid of the pressure of the sea or the feeling of suffocation. Seeing Xian Yin diving into the depths of the sea from afar, Tang Jing shouted, "Xian Yin, stop right there." His voice spread through the sea, causing ripples to appear on the surface of the sea. Xian Yin subconsciously turned her head when she heard the voice. Her eyes were wide open as she watched Tang Jing chase after her at lightning speed. How can he be so fast? Crap, at this rate he'll definitely catch up to me. She thought that by diving into the sea, she could use the underwater world as a cover to avoid Tang Jing's pursuit and escape unscathed. But she had completely underestimated Tang Jing's strength. He was even more powerful underwater than he was on the surface. His speed was also ridiculously fast. Her speed was restricted by the sea and was much weaker. How could she dare to compare with Tang Jing? What should I do? Demonic sound has no effect on him. I just escaped with great difficulty. Am I going to fall into his hands again? Xian Yin was in despair. The bell in her hand shook more and more violently, trying to attack Tang Jing with this last thing she could rely on. Demonic sound entered Tang Jing's ears, but it was like scratching an itch to him. He shouted, "Xian Yin, is this all you can do? Show me all your tricks. Before you die, let me see your true level." His voice entered Xian Yin's ears. She was so angry that smoke was coming out of her 7 orifices. But there was nothing she could do. Her heart was trembling. If she wasn't injured, she naturally wouldn't put Tang Jing in her eyes. Now that she was injured, and Tang Jing had a way to restrain her magic, the situation naturally became extremely dangerous. How could she dare to fight Tang Jing head-on? Seeing that Xian Yin didn't stop at all, it was obvious that she didn't want to fight with him. Her goal couldn't be any more obvious. How could I let you do as you wish? This underwater world is my world. If you walk right into my trap, you'll be courting death. Tang Jing roared and had already caught up to Xian Yin. Whiz! The bowstring of the heaven-shocking bow trembled, and the sun-shooting arrow left the bowstring, drawing a snow-white wave in the sea, fiercely shooting towards Xian Yin. Xian Yin didn't even turn her head, but she could feel what was behind her. Her eyes revealed a sorrowful expression as she suddenly turned and rushed towards the surface of the sea. The bottom of the sea was Tang Jing's world. If she continued to stay, she would have no chance of winning. Furthermore, the air underwater was getting thinner and thinner, so she couldn't continue to hold on. She rushed towards the surface of the sea with all her might. Like a rocket, the seawater was slapped to both sides. However, how could her speed compare to the sun-shooting arrow? The sun-shooting arrow was like a ray of light, reaching her back in the blink of an eye. Ding-ling-ling. The bell rang again, and the yellow light soared into the sky, enveloping her. Kacha! The sun-shooting arrow directly pierced through the light and went straight in. At the critical moment of life and death, Xian Yin activated the bell, which quickly grew larger and directly blocked behind her. Ding! The sun-shooting arrow struck the bell, causing it to tremble violently. The light aura exploded, but it quickly dissipated. Not long later, it disappeared into nothingness. Kacha! The bell also completely cracked, turning into pieces. A sacred artifact had completed its mission. Seeing that, Xian Yin spat out a mouthful of blood and screamed at the top of her lungs, "No!" However, it was already too late. The bell had completely turned into scrap and was completely useless. Xian Yin and the bell were connected. When the bell was destroyed, her mind was violently shaken and her movements immediately slowed down. However, the speed of the sun-shooting arrow did not decrease by much. With a puff, it pierced through his back and came out from his chest. Crash! The powerful force of the sun-shooting arrow brought Xian Yin out of the sea and into the air. Blood and seawater sprinkled down from the sky. Chapter 1250. Xian Yin rushed into the air and a golden light rushed up from the bottom of the sea. Roar! A dragon's roar resounded through the sky as the golden dragon waved its 6 golden claws. It opened its mouth wide and broke out of the water, bringing with it a sky full of water droplets that reflected the golden light. The dragon firmly locked its eyes on Xian Yin, who was in the air. It swayed its tail and flew in front of Xian Yin. It roared, "Xian Yin, you trapped me for hundreds of years. Now I can finally take revenge." Last time, Tang Jing stopped the golden dragon and the red moon from taking revenge because he had some expectations. The golden dragon understood this very well. This time, the situation was very different. The golden dragon knew very well, so when it saw the shooting sun arrow hit Xian Yin, it could not wait to rush out. A strong wind blew and Xian Yin could not resist at all. She could only watch as the dragon's huge mouth fell from the sky and viciously bit her. She struggled and tried to escape from the dragon's mouth. How could that be possible? The golden dragon hated her to the bone. It wanted to bite her into pieces and swallow her. Xian Yin was hit by the shooting sun arrow and her internal organs were greatly damaged. Now that she was bitten by the dragon, even an immortal would not be able to escape. On the sea, when the others saw this scene, their eyes lit up and they were very satisfied. Xian Yin had been scheming, and now she finally knew what it was like to play with fire. But Tang Jing broke out of the water and floated in the air, staring at Xian Yin. He could understand the 5-clawed golden dragon's anger, so he did not stop it. He stepped in front of Xian Yin. Xian Yin stared at him with a pair of bloodshot eyes. "Xian Yin, you have failed." Tang Jing gnashed his teeth and said with a murderous aura. Xian Yin was very clear about her situation. She had no one to rely on and had touched Tang Jing's reverse scale. This was enough to explain her fate. But she was a person who was afraid of death and cherished her life very much. How could she bear to die like this? She had been scheming and playing with the world in the palm of her hand for so long. How could she be willing to accept this? She took her last breath and said with great difficulty, "Tang Jing, if you kill me, then you will never know the secret of the Outland." Tang Jing shook his head. "Compared to the secrets of the Outland, what you did just now has crossed my bottom line. You dared to touch my woman. From that moment on, you have already sentenced yourself to death." The corners of Xian Yin's mouth twitched fiercely as she said, "It's just a woman. There are so many women in the world. With your ability, you can get any woman you want. Why care about a mere woman? If you join forces with me, not only will you have a place in this world, but you will also have a place in the beyond heaven." Although Xian Yin was a woman, her mindset was that of the ancient times. She didn't even see herself as a woman. The ancients had 3 wives and 4 concubines. Very few people valued a woman so much. Therefore, she could not understand Tang Jing. Tang Jing's eyes turned cold. "What a big pie. Unfortunately, compared to my woman, this pie you've painted for me is worthless. Why bother? Throughout history, those who loved beauties over their country all had bad endings. Don't tell me you want to follow in their footsteps? Xianyin tried to persuade him. You cold-blooded woman. You don't know the value of true love. You don't have the right to make thoughtless remarks. Tang Zheng vehemently complained. Xuanin's heart sank. Her silver tongue had bewitched many people in the past. Emperors, generals, ministers, ambitious and ruthless people, no one could resist her. Now that she had met her Waterloo, she couldn't bewitch Tang Zheng at all. Am I, Xianyin, really going to die here? No, I can't accept this. I can't die. Xuanin's heart screamed. Looking at Tang Zheng's eyes, she knew that he had made up his mind. If he really wanted to kill her, even if she lost her mind like last time, he wouldn't show mercy. Her heart was in turmoil. Her despair completely overwhelmed the pain in her body. Why are you talking so much nonsense with her? She's done all kinds of bad things. If you don't kill her, it won't be enough to vent your hatred. If you can't do it, I'll do it. The golden dragon's voice sounded. It bit Xianyin and its voice sounded a bit muffled. Tang Zheng didn't say a word. He reached out and grabbed the shooting sun arrow. Bit by bit he pulled it back. Rip. The sound of the shooting sun arrow being pulled out of bone and flesh made people's hearts tremble. Blood gushed out of the wound. Xuanin's body arched and she let out a heart-wrenching scream. Tang Zheng didn't stop. Like a master sculptor, he was meticulous and didn't want to be careless. Xuanin's scream gradually turned from high-pitched to low. In the end, only the sound of heavy breathing was left. The shooting sun arrow was completely pulled out of Xuanin's body. Blood splattered everywhere. Xianyin seemed to have been choked by someone. Her breathing seemed to have stopped. Her eyes were wide open. After a few seconds, she recovered a bit of her spirit. The fear in her heart gradually spread. Her eyes widened and she looked at Tang Zheng with a pale face. There's no need for you to do it. Tang Zheng calmly replied to the golden dragon. The golden dragon saw this and was in high spirits. It originally thought that Tang Zheng hadn't made up his mind to kill her. Now it seemed that it had worried too much. Xuanin's kidnapping and harming of Fang Shishir was a completely wrong step. Tang Zheng, I beg you, don't kill me. Fang Shishir couldn't care less about the pain. She also realized his determination and hurriedly begged for mercy. It's too late. Tang Zheng didn't give her the slightest chance. Xianyin still didn't give up. She thought of something and gritted her teeth. Don't you want to know the situation in Sky Beyond Heaven? I'll tell you. As long as you don't kill me, let me live. This was her last resort. At this critical moment of life and death, she had no choice but to throw out this condition. Tang Zheng's hand paused for a moment. He looked at her with a complicated expression. Xianyin saw this and as if she had grasped at a life-saving straw, she eagerly said, I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you everything you want to know. Don't listen to her nonsense. Her words can't be trusted at all. The golden dragon also impatiently advised, afraid that Tang Zheng would agree to her request. Xianyin hurriedly shook her head. I'll tell you the truth. I won't hide anything. Otherwise, I'll die a horrible death. Tang Zheng curled his lips playfully. Do you think I'll believe your oath? Xianyin was stunned but still didn't give up. She continued, whether you believe it or not, my words are absolutely true. After a pause, Xuanin's heart seemed to be in a fierce struggle. After a moment, she continued, Sky Beyond Heaven is a mysterious world. Ever since His Majesty unified Sky Beyond Heaven has been deteriorating. It's no longer as prosperous as it used to be. Sky Beyond Heaven's foundation has been destroyed and is becoming more and more unstable. I and the others were chosen as volunteers to pass through the space gate. I'm the only one who came to this world. Stop! Tang Zheng raised his hand and stopped her. This is something we already know. It's meaningless. Seeing Tang Zheng's impatience, Xianyin knew that she had to come up with something useful. Otherwise, her life would be in danger. She no longer hid anything and said loudly, Actually, us volunteers who passed through the space gate didn't do it of our own volition. We're all concubines of the great families. Tang Zheng was enlightened. He clicked his tongue and said, So that's how it is. Your arrogance was all an act. You're not an important person in Sky Beyond Heaven. Xuannin's face stiffened. This was her eternal pain. She couldn't care less about Tang Zheng's ridicule. She hung her head dejectedly and said, "Yes, I'm not an important person. I don't want to return to sky beyond heaven. I've already completed my mission. I expelled all the cultivators of this world to sky beyond heaven to provide energy for sky beyond heaven. I've done my duty." A ferocious look appeared on Xuannin's face. If she returned to sky beyond heaven, she would be an insignificant character. She wouldn't be able to stand at the top of this world and live a carefree life. Tang Jing sneered. "So that's your plan. But what use is it to me? What I want is information about sky beyond heaven." I said, "The specific information about sky beyond heaven isn't important. There's one thing that's more important." "What is it?" Tang Jing raised an eyebrow. "Last time you said that over 1,000 demons have returned from sky beyond heaven. Is that right?" Tang Jing nodded. "What does this have to do with the demons?" "This means that the spatial separation between the two worlds is very weak. Otherwise, how could the demons have returned so easily?" Xianyin said worriedly. "What do you mean?" Tang Zheng suddenly realized that he might have overlooked a lot of things. The spatial separation between the two worlds should be very tight. It would take a lot of effort to open a spatial gate. But now, a great array can summon over 1,000 demons. This is enough to prove that the spatial separation between the two worlds is very weak. Tang Zheng seemed to be deep in thought and raised an objection, saying, "The Mountain River Blood Sacrifice Array is not an ordinary array. It is something that was exchanged with the lives of hundreds of millions of people." Xianyin said disdainfully, "So what? Besides, you should remember that time when the demons summoned the demon god outside the northwest boundary. Didn't they succeed in summoning the demon god after killing only a few people? Moreover, in the past few hundred years, do you think that the demons haven't used the Mountain River Blood Sacrificial Array to summon the demons? But have they succeeded? Let me tell you, they haven't succeeded even once." "What, there's such a thing?" Tang Zheng was shocked. This was something that she definitely didn't know. Perhaps the demons were too secretive in their actions in the past. Of course, the Azure Dragon Palace was an exception. Seeing Tang Zheng's shock, Xianyin felt that her chances of survival were much higher. Of course, the demons haven't succeeded in the past. But now that they've succeeded several times in a row, it's enough to explain many things. I'm the only one who knows the secret behind this. Of course, now that I've told you, you'll know as well." She paused for a moment to let Tang Jing digest this information. "So, this world is not safe. The people of sky beyond heaven will follow in the footsteps of the demons and invade this world." Chapter 1251. Xianyin was lucky to see the dumbfounded look on everyone's faces. She thought that once this news came out, it would be enough to save her life. Tang Zheng and the Empyrean fairy looked at each other, then looked at Xianyin and came to a conclusion. Xianyin was not lying, it was true. The people from the sky beyond heaven would follow in the footsteps of the demons and invade this world. With the nature of the people from the sky beyond heaven, they would definitely do anything. When the time came, this world would be plunged into misery and suffering. As for how many people would survive, that was unknown. What should we do? Both of them had the same question in their eyes. They were not worried about the invasion of the sky beyond heaven and thought that it would be enough to deal with the 1,000 demons. Now it seemed that they had misjudged the current situation. The current situation was far more dangerous than they had expected. The two of them looked at each other in dismay and wanted to ask what to do. But they were helpless. Xianyin saw the clues from their expressions and volunteered, "I have a way to solve this crisis." Tang Jing suddenly turned his head and stared at her, asking, "What way?" Xianyin's lips curved into an unfathomable smile, but she did not answer. Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat and he immediately understood her thoughts. She wanted to use this as leverage to fight for a chance to survive. "You want to use this to threaten me?" Tang Zheng saw through her thoughts. Xianyin corrected him, "It's not a threat, it's a cooperation. I don't want the people from the sky beyond heaven to come to this world. If we cooperate, we can stop all of this." Tang Zheng suddenly had an idea as he looked at Xian Yin with a burning gaze, as if he was deep in thought. You are worried that after those people come, you will become an insignificant person, so you have this idea, right? Xian Yin did not deny it and was silent for a while. Tang Zheng saw this and continued, as for the cooperation you mentioned, Humph, do you think you still have a chance to cooperate? You can't say that. If you cooperate with me, it will only benefit you. Besides, I'm the only one who knows how to stop the people from the sky beyond heaven. Xian Yin looked determined. Tang Zheng's face was cold as he said, if you tell me the method, maybe we can still talk about it. Of course, I won't tell you the method, but I can remind you that the spatial isolation between the two worlds must be strengthened to prevent the invasion of the outer sky. Xian Yin looked as if she would rather be beaten to death than admit it. Instead, she deliberately revealed a few words in an attempt to whet Tang Zheng's appetite. Tang Zheng said thoughtfully, we have to strengthen the spatial isolation between the two worlds. He didn't know the exact method, but Xian Yin was unwilling to tell him. This was her last resort, and with her temper, she definitely wouldn't give in so easily. After what had happened last time, Tang Zheng's hostility towards Xian Yin had increased. He was not prepared to compromise with her at all. Tang Zheng stared straight at her. His gaze was as sharp as a knife as he asked murderously, I'm going to ask you one last time. Are you going to tell me or not? If you're willing to tell me, then perhaps I'll spare your life. If you insist on not telling me, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Xian Yin stared at him, lost in thought. Her heart was in a fierce struggle. She really couldn't decide whether to tell Tang Zheng the truth or not. If she told him, then she wouldn't have anything to rely on and would be at Tang Zheng's mercy. This was the situation she was most worried about. If she didn't tell him and kept dragging on Tang Zheng, then Tang Zheng would most likely not take her life for the time being out of consideration for the overall situation. Her eyes flickered and her heart was tossing and turning. Finally, she heavily exhaled a turbid breath, as if she had made up her mind, and said, if you cooperate with me, I'll naturally tell you. Moreover, I'll give you a hand to defeat the devil race. Presumably, the devil race is an absolute threat to you now. With me, all of this won't be a problem. Hundreds of years ago, I could drive them away. Today, I can still defeat them. Xian Yin was full of confidence, as if she had returned to the high and mighty Xian Yin who was omnipotent. This was indeed a tempting plan. Tang Zheng's heart palpitated with eagerness, but his rationality poured a basin of cold water over his head. His heart instantly became cold and his eyes burst with killing intent. Xian Yin saw this scene and suppressed her palpitations, saying, this is my bottom line. I absolutely won't compromise. You have a bottom line, but do you think I don't? Tang Zheng sneered and pointed at Fang Shishir in the distance. She is my bottom line. You almost killed her, which is a violation of my bottom line. Moreover, you don't want to cooperate and even want to bargain with me. Do you think I'll let you live? Tang Zheng's question gradually became more and more serious, forcing Xian Yin's expression to change again and again. Her breathing also became heavier and heavier, to the point where she even forgot about her wound. Blood continued to drip down, dyeing the seawater below red. Hearing Tang Zheng's interrogation, the golden dragon's eyes flashed with surprise. This was the rhythm of Tang Zheng wanting to kill her. Then he could get his revenge. Xian Yin's face became very pale and she panted like a cow, saying, Tang Zheng, don't mess around. You'll regret it. The invasion of the outer sky is not a trivial matter. It will bring disaster to the world. No one can stay out of it. Only if you and I cooperate can we stop all of this. She was still making a dying struggle, trying to save her life. She still had a trace of luck in her heart. Tang Zheng must be scaring her. She must not be scared by him. Just like last time, she must withstand the pressure to save her life. Tang Zheng turned his head and did not look at her. He had done his best, but Xian Yin still had unrealistic illusions. In this case, there was nothing to talk about. As for the invasion of the outer sky, this was indeed a thorny problem, but there was nothing to be afraid of. It might not be as terrible as Xian Yin said. Even if it was so terrible, so what? At worst, they could just fight. What was there to be afraid of? The most important thing was that the same problem could not be committed twice. This was something he could not tolerate. Golden Dragon, haven't you always wanted to take revenge? She imprisoned you for hundreds of years. Today, you can finally take revenge. Tang Zheng said indifferently without turning his head. The Golden Dragon's eyes immediately burst with light, and its whole body emitted bursts of light. It was particularly dazzling under the sunlight. Good. The Golden Dragon roared excitedly, and its huge dragon eyes locked on Xian Yin. It laughed and said, Xian Yin, this is the price you have to pay for imprisoning me for hundreds of years. Go to hell. As soon as it finished speaking, the Golden Dragon closed its mouth with all its strength, and its sharp teeth directly sank into Xian Yin's body. Crack. Xian Yin's bones broke, and blood splattered everywhere. Xian Yin opened her mouth wide, and only had time to let out half a scream before it came to an abrupt stop. Her eyes widened in disbelief. She never thought that Tang Zheng would ignore the invasion of the outer sky and kill her directly. She did not understand until she died. Crack. Crack. Chapter 1252. The others stared at the scene with their mouths agape. Who would have thought that the Golden Dragon would actually swallow Xian Yin? An expert had fallen just like that. No one pitied her. On the contrary, they were delighted. She had only herself to blame for all the bad things she had done to the world. The others didn't expect that Tang Zheng would use such a ruthless method to have the Golden Dragon kill Xian Yin, but they didn't stop him. Xian Yin is dead, but the problem she left behind is still unsolved. What should we do? The Empyrean Fairy asked. Different situations call for different measures. What's there to be afraid of? Tang Zheng was full of confidence. The Empyrean Fairy looked deeply at him. It may not be as easy as you say. The key is that we have to find a way to strengthen the spatial separation between the two worlds. Tang Zheng understood that her words were reasonable and didn't argue. Don't worry, there will be a way when the time comes. Young man, let me give you a suggestion. Didn't the demons return from the realm beyond heaven? They must have a better understanding of the matters between the two worlds. Perhaps there will be unexpected gains if you discuss with them. The inner demons suddenly pointed out a maze. Tang Zheng's head twitched. He had to admit that the inner demon's words were reasonable, but the demons were his sworn enemies. How could he cooperate with them? You're really stubborn. This is a critical moment of life and death. Why are you still so worried? Are you more conservative than an ancient person like me? The inner demons reprimanded him. Tang Zheng felt ashamed as he replied, I understand. This matter is of great importance, so I cannot stubbornly stick to my own views and seal myself off. That's more like it. The inner demons smiled with gratification. Seeing that Tang Zheng was silent, the Empyrean Fairy asked curiously, Have you thought of a good idea? I do have one. It's worth a try. Then hurry up and say it. Fang Shishir and Yan Qingyi also stared at Tang Zheng at the same time, waiting to see what kind of trick he would use. Regarding Xian Yin's words, the two of them were also at their wits' end. Yan Qingyi was no longer what she used to be, but she still couldn't do anything about it. We're going to find the demons to discuss countermeasures, Tang Zheng said simply. As soon as he said this, the three of them were shocked and frowned. The Empyrean Fairy was the first to understand. She said thoughtfully, You think that the demon race has returned from the realm beyond heaven, so they have a better understanding of the situation and might have a solution, right? After her reminder, the other two also came to a realization. They believed that this proposal was not nonsense and might actually be feasible. Seeing that the Empyrean Fairy had figured it out, she nodded and said, Yes, do you think it will work? The Empyrean Fairy muttered, I think it's feasible. Good, then this is a tentative plan. We'll go back and discuss the details. Tang Zheng decided. Tang Jing, Ding Dang and the others must be very worried when they saw that I was captured. Hurry up and tell them, don't let them worry. Fang Shishir suddenly said. Tang Zheng hurriedly used his divine sense to enter Sumeru world and saw that everyone was as anxious as ants on a hot pan. However, they were trapped in Sumeru world and had no way to contact Tang Zheng. There was nothing he could do. Tang Zheng felt ashamed and comforted them with kind words. Only then did everyone gradually calm down. Shirshir isn't hurt, is she? Yi Dingdang asked with concern. The two of them had gone through many trials and tribulations together. They were already as close as sisters. Shirshir only suffered some superficial wounds. She's fine. What about Xian Yin? Feng Xinyang asked again. She's dead. Good. Yi Dingdang abhorred evil and immediately applauded. She has done so many bad things and even kidnapped Shirshir. This is what she deserves. Tang Zheng comforted them with kind words and then withdrew his divine sense from Sumeru world. The four of them stood on the sea. Feng Shirshir's cultivation was the weakest, so she couldn't stand on the sea for long. In the end, she could only rely on Tang Zheng to support her. She had just been frightened and injured, so Tang Zheng couldn't bear to let her return to Sumeru world. He decided to take her with him and travel with him. The golden dragon soared above the sea, sparkling with golden light. It was very happy that it had gotten its revenge. It let out deafening dragon roars one after another. Fortunately, this was an uninhabited sea. Otherwise, the dragon roars would have scared the others. The golden dragon soared into the sky, but its roars came to an abrupt stop as if it was being strangled. Bang! Falling from the sky, the golden dragon fell directly into the sea, splashing up huge waves several feet high. The others had originally relaxed their minds, but when they saw this scene, their hearts tightened in fright, and they simultaneously straightened their bodies, turning pale with shock as they watched this scene. What's going on? Tang Jing shouted. The golden dragon quickly sank into the sea, letting out a low whimper. Tang Jing secretly cursed. For the golden dragon to have such a big situation, it must be an unusual situation. Plop. Without saying a word, he plunged into the sea like a missile. He saw the golden dragon's body stiffen and its golden light become very weak. Its situation was obviously not good. He quickly swam to the golden dragon's side and hugged its huge head. He roared with all his strength and soared into the sky, flying out of the water with the golden dragon. When the others saw this scene, they were shocked. They quickly rushed over and asked, "What's going on? How did the golden dragon become like this?" Tang Zheng was also at his wit's end. He shook his head and said, "I don't know. Let me wake it up first." He focused on circulating the dragon god technique. His body immediately glowed with a golden light and pieces of golden dragon scales appeared. In an instant he seemed to have turned into a dragon. Especially the majestic dragon chi and dragon might, it made people tremble. They had the urge to crawl on the ground and kowtow. They couldn't help but sigh at Tang Zheng's strength. This was something that the Empyrean fairy couldn't do. Tang Zheng was completely immersed in the golden dragon's body. He found that a mysterious power was rushing around, colliding with its meridians and internal organs. This power was very powerful. It was like breaking through dry weeds. The golden dragon's own energy was unable to resist. Although the golden dragon's body was imprisoned, its divine sense did not disappear. It seemed to have sensed Tang Zheng's existence and hurriedly shouted, "Hurry up and save me. This is because I swallowed Xuanin's body just now." Tang Zheng was extremely surprised. He thought that the golden dragon had some kind of chronic illness, but he didn't expect that it was caused by Xuanin's body. Why was Xuanin's body so powerful? "Moonlight essence, it's moonlight essence." The golden dragon shouted. It already knew the crux of the problem. Tang Zheng was shocked. What did this have to do with moonlight essence? However, when he carefully sensed the mysterious power, it was indeed similar to the power of stars that he had absorbed in the past. The power of stars was a very mysterious power. It was denser and more powerful than the spiritual energy of heaven and earth that he usually absorbed during cultivation. Moonlight essence was a type of power of stars. Its power was naturally not to be underestimated. Therefore, when Xian was swallowed by the golden dragon, the moonlight essence was completely released. This power repelled the golden dragon's power, which led to the previous scene. Tang Zheng had absorbed the power of stars before, so he didn't feel anything different. It didn't even cause any harm to his body. Instead, it was very beneficial. He was very surprised to see that the moonlight essence had such a great effect on the golden dragon. He also gradually realized that the power of stars was far more powerful than he had imagined. Moreover, the demon lord's attempt to obtain the red lunar beast's core and absorb the moonlight essence for his own use was probably wishful thinking. The reality was far more complicated than the demon lord thought. In fact, Tang Zheng was overthinking it. Once someone consumed the red lunar beast's core, they would have the ability to absorb the moonlight essence. It was natural for the red lunar beast to absorb the moonlight essence to increase its cultivation. There wouldn't be any side effects. Most importantly, the golden dragon didn't consume the red lunar beast's core. Instead, it swallowed Xianyin directly. Therefore, the moonlight essence in her body wouldn't disappear with her death. Energy was conserved. When a person died, the energy in their body would merge with heaven and earth. This was a long process, so there wouldn't be any abnormalities. Of course, if the golden dragon swallowed an ordinary person or a normal cultivator, it could also completely digest the energy in their body. In the end, this kind of energy was transformed from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It was similar to the energy that the golden dragon absorbed from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. There wouldn't be any backlash. However, the moonlight essence was different. It was a higher level of energy. It didn't merge with the energy in the golden dragon's body. Instead, it was like a mortal enemy that wanted to kill the other. This caused the two forces to fight against each other. Xuanyin's cultivation wasn't any weaker than the golden dragon's. Therefore, the moonlight essence in her body wasn't any weaker than the golden dragon's. Although Tang Jing didn't completely understand the mystery, he knew that he had to extract the moonlight essence from the golden dragon's body in order to get it out of danger. The golden dragon panicked. It was no longer as calm as before. It said regretfully, "Xuanyin's body is so different from others. If I knew this, I wouldn't have swallowed her." Tang Zheng had a solution, so he wasn't worried. After all, he was someone who had absorbed the power of the stars with the help of the celestial chess. Therefore, he knew that he could smoothly absorb the moonlight essence. He comforted the golden dragon, "Don't worry. With me here, you'll be fine. I'll absorb the moonlight essence in your body first." Hearing Tang Zheng's words, the golden dragon was skeptical. However, it still chose to believe him in the end. It hurriedly urged, "Then hurry up and absorb this energy." Seeing the golden dragon in pain and worry, Tang Zheng also knew that he couldn't delay any longer. He withdrew his divine sense from the golden dragon's body. Seeing the other three anxiously watching, he explained, "It'll be fine. I have a way to cure it." The others let out a sigh of relief. Tang Zheng didn't say anything else. His mind was immersed in the golden dragon's body again. He circulated the dragon god's secret art and sent his true qi into the golden dragon's body. Both sides cultivated the dragon god's secret art, so when Tang Zheng's true qi entered the golden dragon's body, it didn't resist too much. His true qi successfully captured the moonlight essence. The moonlight essence had already turned into countless strands. It wasn't as simple as he thought. Chapter 1253. The moonlight essence was inextricably linked, and Tang Zheng was even more meticulous. Even though he had met his match, Tang Zheng was not afraid at all. He had to succeed. When a strand of moonlight essence finally entered Tang Zheng's body under the guidance of his vital energy, he did not feel any discomfort. On the contrary, his spirit was shaken, as if he had absorbed the energy himself. His eyes shone, and he was full of spirit. "The moonlight essence is actually useful to me." He was overjoyed. Actually, this was a matter of course. After all, the star power he absorbed using heavenly chess was of a higher level than the moonlight essence, so absorbing the moonlight essence was naturally not a problem. After tasting the sweetness, he immediately circulated his power and absorbed the moonlight essence crazily. However, this was a delicate task. After he had absorbed the largest strands of moonlight essence, his speed slowed down significantly. His expression darkened, as he understood that he had reached a bottleneck. The golden dragon's condition improved slightly, and its consciousness became clearer. Seeing this effect, it hurriedly urged, Hurry up, I feel much better. Tang Zheng wanted to roll his eyes at it. Did it think that this was as simple as buying cabbage in the market? Seeing that Tang Zheng did not speak, the golden dragon understood that the situation had changed. It was not as simple and smooth as it thought, so it asked nervously, "Is there a problem?" Tang Zheng said bluntly, "The moonlight essence is inextricably linked, and there are too many of them. Moreover, many of them are very small, so I have to absorb them all. I can't leave any side effects because I didn't absorb them all. Do you understand?" The golden dragon seemed to understand, but not quite. Seeing this, Tang Zheng added, "There are too many and too small moonlight essence, so absorbing them will take too much time. Do you understand?" The golden dragon suddenly understood. It was a powerhouse, so it immediately understood the difficulties. "I understand. What should I do?" Tang Zheng muttered to himself. After a while, an idea flashed through his mind and he said, "I have an idea." The golden dragon was overjoyed and asked impatiently. Tang Zheng did not keep it in suspense and said, "Sky swallowing technique. The sky swallowing technique can absorb many things, so this moonlight essence is naturally not a problem. It's just that the swallowing sky technique doesn't absorb different things. Once I cast the technique, your own power will be taken away as well. I have to think of a way to distinguish it." Of course, the golden dragon understood how unfavorable all of this was to him, but what could he do? For the sake of his own life, he had no choice but to compromise. "It's okay. Come on, I can handle it. Isn't it just a little bit of skill?" The golden dragon was awe-inspiring, like a martyr who was ready to die heroically. Seeing that it had agreed, Tang Zheng did not dawdle. After all, survival was the most important thing. "Then you better be prepared. I'm going to use the sky swallowing technique," Tang Zheng said as he placed his palm on the golden dragon's body. A small black hole appeared in his palm, and the golden light on the golden dragon's scales was immediately absorbed by the black hole. In the blink of an eye, the golden dragon's luster dimmed a little as a lot of it was absorbed by the black hole. Tang Zheng had been deliberately controlling the sky swallowing technique. The sky swallowing technique could absorb many things, including the power of others. In the past, he had absorbed other people's power. This time, he was doing it again, but the target was the golden dragon. The golden dragon's body shook as it immediately felt something strange. Its power was like flowing water, quickly flowing out of its meridians and converging in Tang Zheng's body. At the same time, the essence of the moonlight also flowed into Tang Zheng's body. "Why are you completely fine?" The golden dragon finally came back to his senses and was in the mood to ponder over the mystery. Tang Zheng said lightly, "I can absorb the power of the stars, so the essence of the moonlight is naturally not a problem." The golden dragon knew a thing or two about the power of the stars. It was shocked, but it did not continue to ask. "You should worry about yourself first. If you can't handle it, then tell me." Tang Zheng said. The golden dragon was silent for a moment, then gritted its teeth and said, "You continue, I can handle it." "That's good." Tang Zheng knew that whether it was Xian Yin's moonlight essence or the golden dragon's power, it would be very beneficial to him. This time, he had accidentally saved the golden dragon and also benefited himself. Of course, he did not dare to be careless. The two powers were like flowing water, pouring out of the golden dragon's body and rushing into Tang Zheng's body. Tang Zheng did not refuse and quickly absorbed the energy, his body gradually releasing a golden light. Because of the sky swallowing technique, the two powers were absorbed and there was no place to hide. A low groan sounded in Tang Zheng's mind. This was the sound of the golden dragon's power being drained. But since the golden dragon did not tell him to stop, Tang Zheng naturally would not stop. Tang Zheng was like a piece of the sea, constantly absorbing power, the power in his body rapidly increasing. He cultivated the dragon god's secret art, so the golden dragon's power was very beneficial to him. The dragon mark on his forehead bloomed with a golden light, and the golden dragon seemed to be shining brightly, shaking its head and wagging its tail, showing the dragon's power. Tang Zheng naturally saw this scene and understood that this indicated that the little golden dragon would also change. His heart was as calm as water, without any ripples. No matter what happened to the golden dragon, he would be calm. How it developed would depend on the will of the heavens. The golden dragon's power was completely gathered in the dragon mark, and the light in the dragon mark was strong to the extreme. The dragon's eyes opened wide, and 2 golden lights burst out. A low dragon roar burst out of the little golden dragon's mouth. The golden light gathered under the little golden dragon's abdomen. Suddenly, the golden light was as bright as the sun, piercing people's eyes. The golden light was a kind of golden light, and a small dragon claw gradually condensed and grew from the little golden dragon's abdomen. The 6-clawed golden dragon did not see this scene. Otherwise, it would be very surprised, and of course, it would be more distressed. This was its power, but it was benefiting Tang Zheng in vain. Of course, at this time, it did not have the energy to feel distressed. It was mentally weak and couldn't wait for Tang Zheng to completely absorb the moonlight essence. The moonlight essence flowed through Tang Zheng's 8 extraordinary meridians. Not long after, the moonlight essence gathered in Tang Zheng's zifu, floating above Yuanying's head like an auspicious cloud. This was what surprised Tang Zheng. The golden dragon's power facilitated the formation of the dragon claw. This was a matter of course, but the moonlight essence floating above Yuanying's head seemed to be about to undergo an unexpected change. What kind of change will it be? Tang Zheng moved. Ever since he could not use the heavenly chess, he had not absorbed the power of the stars. But this time, the injection of the moonlight essence allowed him to taste the power of the stars again. He was overwhelmed with emotions, and while constantly urging the sky-devouring technique to absorb the 2 powers, he looked forward to the changes that were about to happen. Boom! Chapter 1254. Purple lightning flashed and contrasted with Yuanying, giving off a sense of mystery. Boom! The purple lightning let out another loud sound and struck Yuanying's head. Yuanying revealed a pained expression, as if he was resisting the power of the purple lightning. Ping ping! Yuanying's body was surrounded by lightning, flashing and ringing nonstop. If anyone saw this scene, they would be horrified. This was a scene that normal practitioners would not be able to experience. This was Yuanying undergoing the tempering of the purple lightning. The power of lightning was already extraordinary, and purple lightning was one of the best among all lightning. It contained a great amount of power. To temper Yuanying with purple lightning, this could only be done with great luck. Of course, it also required great courage and boldness. In fact, since ancient times, many people had discovered the power of lightning and tried to use it to temper their bodies and Yuanying. However, the power of lightning was too strong, and many people failed in their experiments and turned into charcoal. The famous thunderstorm in history was not just a natural phenomenon. There were many signs of it being thought of. Practitioners took the world into their bodies and formed their own little world. When they cultivated to the extreme, or if they had the ultimate skill to block the door, they could trigger the weather and attract lightning to the mortal world, striking their bodies and shattering their faces. This was a very risky move. Normal people would not dare to try it. Furthermore, many people did not even know about it. Tang Zheng had accidentally absorbed too much of the moonlight essence. The moonlight essence was an extremely powerful energy between heaven and earth. Moonlight essence and lightning energy had the same effect. When the moonlight essence accumulated to a certain amount, it would undergo a qualitative change and become purple lightning. He was completely unaware of how unique his experience was. He subconsciously immersed himself in this state. Purple lightning tempered the body. Small lightning bolts like small snakes swam around the surface of Yuanying's body. Gradually, these purple lightning bolts seemed to be unsatisfied with their current results and tried to expand their territory. They broke free from Yuanying and spread towards the inner walls of his zifu. Ping! The purple lightning struck the inner walls of his zifu. It was as if his zifu was about to be penetrated. A soul-deep pain was transmitted to Tang Zheng's nerves. Ah! He suddenly raised his head and let out a heart-wrenching scream. The others were frightened by this scene. Fang Shishir was anxious and wanted to rush over to help him, but she was stopped by Empyrean Fairy. Wait a minute. Fang Shishir said anxiously, "What's wrong with him?" Wasn't he saving the golden dragon? Why is it so painful? Is it dangerous? The Empyrean fairy couldn't say for sure either. She furrowed her brows and stared at Tang Zheng. She seemed to have sensed something and said, "There seems to be a very powerful energy in his body." "What kind of energy?" Fang Shishir asked. Yan Qingyi also looked at Tang Zheng curiously. Although she had obtained a mysterious inheritance, she did not have a deep foundation. There were many aspects that were unique, but there were still many aspects that were lacking. The Empyrean fairy had been using her skills to sense this energy. Suddenly, her heart lit up and she exclaimed, "The power of lightning." She could already control the wind, rain, thunder, and lightning attacks of the stately painting, so she was naturally familiar with the power of lightning. Therefore, after some investigation, she finally discovered the truth. There was a majestic power of lightning in Tang Zheng's body. This power of lightning was far stronger than ordinary lightning. This was too inconceivable. Although she could control the lightning in the stately painting, it was used for attack and outside of her body. She did not dare to let the lightning enter her body. Her body was not strong enough to withstand the power of lightning. However, at this moment, the lightning had appeared in Tang Zheng's body. She definitely could not be wrong. No wonder Tang Zheng was in so much pain. It was the lightning that was causing trouble. In addition, this lightning was stronger than ordinary lightning, so the pain he was enduring was naturally more intense. "He's using lightning to temper his body," the Empyrean fairy pointed out. After all, she was an experienced and knowledgeable person. Although she could not use lightning to temper her body, her father, the Emperor of Heaven, had gone through this stage in the past. This was a torturous process. Once successful, the harvest would be incomparably huge. The physical body would be stronger, and ordinary attacks would not be able to harm it. In addition, if there was enough opportunity, the physical body could also be used by the lightning. When fighting against the enemy, the lightning could be used to defend the enemy. This was more powerful than the lightning that the Empyrean fairy used to trigger with the stately painting. The other two did not know about the lightning tempering, so they were a little confused and frightened. To them, lightning was a very powerful thing that should never be touched. Now that Tang Zheng had lightning in his body, wouldn't he be in danger? Fang Shishir couldn't help but grab the Empyrean fairy's clothes. "He's too dangerous. You have to save him." The Empyrean fairy sighed and shook her head helplessly. "There's nothing I can do. I've never experienced lightning tempering before, so I don't dare to trigger it. That's why I can't help him. However, many people in history have done so. Some succeeded, while others failed." "What happens if you fail?" Fang Shishir asked nervously. She had an ominous premonition in her heart. The Empyrean fairy's expression was indifferent as she softly spat out a word, "Death." Fang Shishir's entire body trembled, and her face became incomparably pale. She nervously asked, "Then what about Tang Zheng?" "Let's wait and see." The other two had no choice but to look at Tang Zheng quietly and hope that he could defeat the lightning. However, the Empyrean fairy muttered in her heart. When other people used lightning to temper their bodies, they used lightning from the outside world. However, there was no lightning just now, so where did he get the lightning from? Could it be that this lightning was born in his body? She was shocked by this thought. Not to mention the Emperor of Heaven, even other people had never heard of such an experience. "He's truly unique." She sighed in her heart, feeling that she could not understand him at all. The purple lightning had already spread along the inner wall of the Zifu towards the 8 extra meridians. Not long after, his meridians were filled with purple electric nets, tempering his meridians, muscles, and bones. He screamed miserably, as if the most painful punishment in the world was being inflicted on his body. His facial muscles quickly twisted, making him look extremely frightening. He gradually understood that this was not necessarily a bad thing. In the past, he had always been tempering his body, but he had only used the innate qi to stimulate and temper it. The effect was not bad, but it was far from being as powerful as the purple lightning. In addition, he had also specially cultivated the chaotic Vajra spell, which was a cultivation technique that specialized in cultivating the body. Ever since he had reached the Vajra body, the progress of the chaotic Vajra spell had been extremely slow. The Vajra body was indeed very useful. It was already extremely difficult for ordinary magic treasure to harm him, unless it was an extremely powerful enemy. The chaotic Vajra spell had a total of 5 stages. The Vajra body was the 4th stage, and there was still the most powerful indestructible behind it. Once he reached the indestructible realm, his body would be extremely difficult to destroy. Only a heaven-defying existence would be able to destroy his body. Of course, even if he reached the indestructible body, it was not an immortal body. It was only an immortal body. Once his soul was destroyed, he could also die. For an ordinary person to destroy his soul, it would be harder than ascending to the heavens. This was equivalent to adding a protective layer to himself, and it would be of great benefit when fighting against enemies. The chaotic Vajra spell that had not made any progress until now seemed to be about to make some progress. Tang Zheng's feeling was extremely strong, so no matter how painful it was, he still clenched his teeth and endured it. Thump! The purple lightning swam through his entire body. Not long after, it seeped out of his skin and swam around his body. This scene was clearly seen by everyone else. When they saw the purple lightning, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Is this lightning? Why is it purple? Fang Shishir pointed at Tang Zheng and asked with a trembling voice. Empyrean Fairy also frowned, her heart trembling. She could sense that it was lightning, but she did not expect it to be purple lightning. Purple lightning? How could there be such lightning? Whether it was the lightning that the Emperor of Heaven had used to temper his body, or the lightning that she had drawn out from the mountain river map, they were all white. It was dazzling white. There was a world of difference between the 2 types of lightning. Who was strong and who was weak could be determined with a single glance. The purple lightning was clearly stronger than the white lightning. Why is there such a strange lightning in his body? What caused all of this? She muttered to herself. The other 2 also heard her words and started to mutter in their hearts. She couldn't figure out the mystery behind it. She could only open her eyes wide, as if she didn't want to miss any details. Thump! The purple lightning continued to wander around Tang Zheng's body. His skin was crushed, and cracks appeared on his diamond body. Cracks that looked like broken porcelain appeared on his skin. Ah, this pain was very unbearable. Tang Zheng let out a heart-wrenching scream. When the others saw this scene, they were shocked. Fang Shishir's hands were tightly clasped together. Her palms were covered in cold sweat. Tang Zheng, you can do it. You have to make it. I'll wait for you. She prayed silently. God, you have to make him make it. His skin was completely broken and fragmented. The purple lightning was like small snakes, sometimes drilling into the cracks of his skin, and sometimes coming out. It came and went as it pleased, as if it was entering an uninhabited land. Tang Zheng's scream turned from high-pitched to low. He seemed to be exhausted, and his breath became weak. He fell to the sea, his palm leaving the golden dragon. The golden dragon woke up. It suddenly raised its head and flew into the sky. It let out a deafening dragon roar and looked at Tang Zheng with shining eyes. The moonlight essence in its body had been completely absorbed, and a lot of its power had been absorbed into Tang Zheng's body. It was very distressed, but when it saw Tang Zheng's situation, its heart suddenly tightened. It had just tried to communicate with Tang Zheng with its divine sense, but found that it had failed. Tang Zheng's mind was completely immersed in other aspects, isolated from the outside world. Seeing that the golden dragon had recovered, the others didn't show any signs of relief. Compared to the golden dragon, they were more worried about Tang Zheng. The purple lightning shuttled back and forth. Unknowingly, the cracks stopped expanding and gradually shrank inward. The torn muscles closed again, and the skin gathered together. The cracks were repaired. The purple lightning drilled back into the skin, and a mysterious purple luster appeared on the skin. It quickly disappeared. Tang Zheng still didn't open his eyes. He lay on the sea and didn't remain silent, but a voice in his heart was cheering, "Indestructible body." Chapter 1255. Indestructible Body. This was the 5th stage of the chaotic Vajra spell. If not for luck, it would have been impossible for him to reach this realm. The chaotic Vajra spell was a cultivation technique of the witch clan. The witch clan was strong, so they cultivated this kind of ability. However, very few people had reached the indestructible body realm. The witch clan elders were the best of the best, but they had only cultivated to the diamond body. The witch clan members all pursued an indestructible body. But this time, Tang Jing had managed to cultivate it. If the witch clan knew about this, they would definitely cheer and celebrate with the entire clan. Tang Jing stopped screaming, and the heart-wrenching feeling gradually disappeared. However, his emotions had not calmed down yet. This was because the power of the golden dragon had caused other changes. Inside the dragon seal, the 8th dragon claw had already grown out. Tiny dragon scales covered the newly born dragon claw, shining with a brilliant golden light. 8th stage of the dragon god arts. Tang Jing felt as if he was in a dream. He naturally understood what kind of situation this was, and his heart was in turmoil. The 8th stage of the dragon god arts meant that he could go to Langya to explore the 8th floor. What exactly was hidden inside was still something that Tang Jing was extremely curious about. Actually, he had only just stepped onto the 6th floor of Langya. Back then, due to the time constraints, he did not even have the time to step onto the 7th floor. Now that he could step onto the 8th floor, the 2 floors of Langya were waiting to be excavated. This was indeed an exciting matter. He suppressed the anticipation in his heart and channeled the dragon god arts. The little golden dragon inside the dragon seal shook its head and wagged its tail, roaring towards the sky as a brilliant golden light burst out from the little golden dragon's body. In that instant, the golden light pierced through the dragon seal, through the layers of obstructions, and came out from his skin. He was like a dazzling sun, changing the halo from before and dyeing the surrounding sea golden. His eyes suddenly opened and a golden light shot out, forcing people to look away, not daring to look straight at him. When the others saw him open his eyes, they were both nervous and wanted to cheer. They didn't know if he was good or bad. However, the golden dragon was different. It could see the change in him with a single glance. The dragon god arts had actually broken through once again. This is because it absorbed my power. Of course, it understood the reason behind all of this and couldn't help but feel a little angry. It hadn't been long since it grew its 7th claw, and its power had yet to be fully consolidated. Now that it had lost so much of its power, it could be said that its vitality had been greatly damaged. Xianyin, you really are a troublemaker. Even after you're dead, you still won't stop. You've harmed me again. If I had known that there would be this side effect, I would have made you die even more miserably, the golden dragon cursed. Tang Jing also did not expect that the golden dragon would swallow Xianyin. He had learned from his mistakes and knew that Xianyin had a way to resist his soul-searching technique. The soul-searching technique was ineffective, and there was no way to seize information about the sky beyond heaven from her brain. Therefore, he did not waste his energy and let the golden dragon deal with it on its own. The golden dragon cursed in its heart as it observed Tang Jing. It seemed to want to see what was different about him. Suddenly, Tang Jing looked up to the sky and let out a long roar that sounded like a dragon's roar coming out of his throat, scaring the others. The whistling stopped, and Tang Jing calmed down. The golden light on his body and eyes faded away, leaving only a pair of embarrassed and spirited eyes. As long as it was someone who understood Tang Jing, they would definitely be able to discover that his temperament had undergone an earth-shattering change. When Feng Shishir saw this, she hurriedly rushed over and asked with concern, "How is it?" Tang Jing faintly smiled and held her hand, saying, "Everything's been taken care of." "You were so scary just then. I thought you would leave me," Feng Shishir said with lingering fear. After Tang Jing comforted her, he turned to look at the golden dragon. The golden dragon also stared at him with wide eyes. "You've broken through to the 4th stage of the dragon god technique." The golden dragon finally spoke. Tang Jing nodded. "Yes, it's all thanks to you." The golden dragon was extremely conflicted. In the end, it let out a long sigh, saying, "Thank you for saving me." Tang Zheng did not take the credit and said with a bit of shame, "This is also my fault. If I had known that the moonlight essence would cause this kind of side effect, I wouldn't have let you swallow it. I don't regret it. She caused me to be imprisoned for several hundred years. Only by drinking her blood and eating her flesh could I vent the hatred in my heart." The golden dragon said through gritted teeth. Tang Jing expressed his understanding. If it were him, he would have done the same. "You absorbed the moonlight essence. Is there anything wrong with your body?" The golden dragon asked curiously. Tang Zheng could absorb the moonlight essence and be fine, but it had almost died. The difference between them was obvious. The feeling of being compared to Tang Zheng was very complicated. Tang Zheng looked deeply at the golden dragon and instantly understood what it was thinking and said, "This is related to the fact that I used the heavenly chest to absorb the power of the stars. The essence of the moonlight is a type of power of the stars, so I will naturally not suffer a backlash." The golden dragon nodded in understanding. Although it had already guessed the reason, hearing it from Tang Zheng's mouth still made it difficult to hide its complicated feelings. Back then, didn't the demon commander always want to consume the red crescent beast's core and obtain the ability to absorb the moonlight essence? Since you've absorbed Xuanin's moonlight essence, will you inherit her ability? The golden dragon suddenly had an idea and asked on a whim. A light flashed in Tang Zheng's mind. He had never thought about this question before. This sentence suddenly woke Tang Zheng up. He said with some expectation, "You're saying that I might also obtain Xuanin's ability?" If this was true, then it would definitely be an unexpected gain. The golden dragon was also not sure, saying, "It's possible. Why don't you give it a try?" Tang Zheng looked up at the sun hanging high in the sky and said, "It's broad daylight right now. The moonlight essence is not rich, so the test might not be accurate. You won't lose anything by giving it a try." The golden dragon also wanted to know the answer. The Empyrean fairy understood the conversation between the two. She was no stranger to the bizarre red crescent beast. If Tang Jing really obtained Xuanin's ability, then it would really be a pleasant surprise. Fang Shishir also looked at Tang Jing encouragingly. The person she loved had a series of fortuitous encounters and great gains, so she was happy from the bottom of her heart. Naturally, she also wanted to get to the bottom of this matter and be reassured. Yan Qingyi did not know the mystery behind it. She did not even know about the Xuanin beast, but she was also very interested and looked at him with shining eyes. Seeing that the few of them were impatient to know the answer, Tang Jing did not continue to refuse. He nodded and said, "All right, as you wish." He closed his eyes and quietly felt the power between heaven and earth. The heaven and earth spiritual qi was more abundant than on land. When it sensed his call, it quickly rushed into his body like a whirlwind. This was not what he wanted. He quickly stabilized his mind and urged his cultivation, trying to sense the moonlight essence. Chapter 1256. A strong sense of summoning was born. He seemed to have sensed the moon in the sky. Although it was broad daylight, the moon was still there. It was just that it was covered by the light of the sun. In the past, although he knew of its existence, he could not communicate with the moon and absorb the essence of the moonlight even if he looked at it with his own eyes. He could only do this with the help of the celestial chess. But this time, it was different. He had a vague sense of the moon. He was very familiar with this feeling. In the past, when he communicated with the stars and guided the power of the stars to descend to the mortal world, he felt this way. He seemed to have understood something, and an indescribable joy flashed through his heart. Could it be that the golden dragon was right? Sure enough, there was a subtle connection between him and the moon. When he activated his power, a vast and mighty moonlight essence descended from the sky, passing through space and arriving at this part of the sea. In an instant, it was as if he was suddenly enlightened. He was enveloped by the essence of the moonlight. The vast and mighty essence of the moonlight rushed from the top of his head into his meridians, flowing towards his 5 viscera and 6 bowels. Finally, it gathered at the top of his Yuanning's head, causing tiny flashes of light to appear on the outside of his Yuanning's body. I really absorbed the moonlight essence. Tang Zheng was as clear as a mirror. His joy was indescribable. The moonlight essence hovered for a long time. Suddenly, it swooped down and drilled into Yuanning's body. In an instant, Yuanning glowed, looking even more mighty and extraordinary. Tang Zheng blinked, and an idea flashed through his mind. Since he had obtained Xuaning's ability, which was the unique ability of the red lunar beast, could he make specific changes to it? Since the moonlight essence was a kind of power of the stars, could he use this method to directly absorb the power of the stars? The essence of moonlight was too simple. The power of the stars was like a treasure trove, containing even more rare treasures. Once he could successfully absorb it, he would not be restricted by the celestial chess at all. He would be able to absorb the power of the stars anytime and anywhere for his own use, increasing his strength and cultivation. Before he had time to quietly feel the power of the stars, a strange scene appeared in the sky, attracting the attention of the other three people. The three pairs of eyes stared at the sky and exclaimed, "What is that?" "We have seen this scene in the capital before. It's the blood moon." The blood moon had appeared in the capital before. The Empyrean fairy knew it was because the red lunar beast had absorbed the moonlight essence. She did not expect to see it again in the sea. Everyone looked at this scene with mixed feelings, unable to speak for a long time. It was broad daylight, and there was a sun in the sky. There was also a faintly discernible moonlight. This scene would definitely cause a big commotion. It would become the topic of discussion and research for countless people. Tang Zheng did not take it to heart. He continued to channel his power, absorbing the power of the stars in the sky. The stars were very far away from each other. As Tang Zheng channeled his power, these stars emitted a dazzling light. They passed through the distant space and were faintly discernible in the sky. However, the sky was too far away. The light of these stars was not as strong as the moonlight. Ordinary people could not see them at all. She could see through people who weren't ordinary clearly. The Empyrean fairy and the others were the first to see this scene. Their power was not what it used to be. They were not ordinary people. What's going on? They muttered in their hearts. In the past, when Tang Zheng used the celestial chest to channel the power of the stars, it was always at night. No matter how bright the stars in the sky were or how extraordinary they were not easy to discover. Or perhaps it was too easy to overlook them. Now that they had appeared in broad daylight, it was extraordinary. Naturally, it would attract the attention of those who were interested. It was not just the Empyrean fairy and the others. On the ground, many people also discovered this scene, causing a large reaction. They all treated this scene and the appearance of the moon as a continuous event. As for what mysteries were involved, ordinary people could not guess at all. Everyone racked their brains, wanting to find out the ins and outs of this matter. As for the person involved, he was still immersed in a wonderful state. When he stopped absorbing the power of the stars, the strange scene in the sky gradually disappeared. He raised his head and looked. He shook his head slightly and said with a sigh, "Although this technique is good, it may not be a good thing to cause too much of a reaction." When the others heard this, they speechlessly rolled their eyes. This was showing off after receiving benefits, being picky and picky. Seeing their reactions, Tang Zheng could not help but laugh. He also knew that he had been too greedy. So many people had tried to obtain this ability. He had only been able to intermittently absorb the power of the stars with the help of the celestial chess. Now, he was not restricted by the power of the stars at all. He could freely absorb the power of the stars at any time. In the future, once he absorbed more and more power of the stars, his cultivation would definitely rise to another level. This would open up a fast track for his cultivation. It was something worth celebrating. The Empyrean fairy gradually calmed down and asked, "What happened to your body just now?" With three pairs of eyes watching this scene, Tang Zheng had no way of hiding it. Moreover, they were not outsiders, so he might as well tell them the truth. When they heard about everything that had happened in his body, as well as the many changes that had occurred, everyone was dumbfounded. This series of fortuitous encounters was too much for them to handle. The Empyrean fairy looked at him with a complicated expression. As a person who pursued strength, she wished that she could have the same kind of luck as Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng did not understand the significance of lightning tempering the body, so he calmly said, "No need to make a fuss. This is not a big deal." If this was not a big deal, then what was? The few of them wished they could just blurt out and question him. Seeing the strange looks in everyone's eyes, Tang Zheng's heart moved. He asked, "Could it be that there is some kind of mystery behind this?" Lightning tempering the body has existed since ancient times. But for you to produce lightning in your body for no reason and use it to temper your body, this is something that I have never seen before. The Empyrean fairy said in a low voice. After a slight pause, she added, "No, this should be something that has never been heard of before." Tang Zheng was slightly startled. Although he had never seen lightning tempering the body before, he did not think that it was too rare. After hearing the Empyrean fairy, she realized that this matter was far more complicated than she had imagined. But one thing was for sure, for him, there were no disadvantages, only advantages. Chapter 1257. The thought flashed through Xuannin's mind, but she didn't put it into practice. Tang Zheng realized the extraordinary power of the purple lightning body tempering and rejoiced. All of this was caused by the essence of the moonlight. He had absorbed the power of the stars before, but it was too little after all. It couldn't be compared to the moonlight essence that Xuannin had spent hundreds of years absorbing. I'll definitely absorb more power of the stars in the future. I don't know how many chain reactions there will be. I'm really looking forward to it. After the interlude with Xuannin, everyone was unable to calm down. After saying a few more words, the golden dragon returned to Tang Zheng's arm. Everything was calm and peaceful. The few of them accompanied each other as they left the sea and set foot on their journey home. Not long after they left, a person suddenly appeared in this calm sea area. If Tang Zheng saw this, he would definitely cry out in alarm. This was the dragon slayer he saw in the illusion of Langya Pavilion. He had come to this world through the spatial door earlier. He sensed the existence of a dragon, which was the golden dragon. In addition, he also sensed a looming and ethereal dragon. This was something that had never happened before. It shocked him. He decided to follow the clues and find these two dragons. He first followed the clues of the golden dragon and followed it here. Especially when the golden dragon appeared just now and roared. The others didn't notice it, but he did. However, he was still a step too late. Looking at the calm sea, he knew that he had missed the golden dragon. This also confirmed one thing, and that was that he was not chasing after the wrong dragon. There was indeed a golden dragon. There were only two dragons in this world, so there must be a connection. If he found this golden dragon, he could naturally find the other one. This was killing two birds with one stone. Of course, he wouldn't let go of this opportunity. He looked in the direction where Tang Zheng and the others disappeared, and the corner of his mouth hooked up into a complacent smile. He muttered to himself, "Little golden dragon, I will find you very soon. After absorbing your dragon soul, I will become even stronger." His figure flashed and disappeared. In the next second, he seemed to have appeared in the sky. His speed was so fast that it made people speechless. Tang Zheng and the others finally returned to Beijing. The others came out of Sumeru World and parted ways. Yan Qingyi left with Yan Luyun and the crew. When Yan Qingyi returned to the Yan family, Yan Patian had already heard a few words from Yan Luyun, especially regarding Yan Qingyi's various miraculous encounters, causing Yan Patian to be unable to sit still. Therefore, he personally went to the door to welcome his daughter back. This was a supreme honor. The other people who didn't know the reason all looked at him. "Father, I'm back." Yan Qingyi looked at her father and said calmly. Yan Patian excitedly took a few steps forward, held her hand and said, "Qingyi, you're finally back." His eyes stared at Yan Qingyi, as if he wanted to find out what was so special about her. In the end, he came to the conclusion that other than his daughter's calmer temperament, which was like an ancient well that made people unable to figure out her, there was no obvious change in other aspects. He did not doubt the news that Yan Luyun had sent back. He knew that his daughter must be too profound, which was why he was unable to see through her. He was extremely excited. He had never interfered with Yan Qingyi's decision. If not for this love, as a disciple of an aristocratic family, how could Yan Qingyi be so leisurely and do whatever she wanted? Without a doubt, if he had stopped Yan Qingyi, there was a high chance that she would not have achieved what she had today. A sense of honor arose spontaneously and filled his heart. He accompanied his daughter to the inner room with a red face. The other unrelated people all retreated. Everyone outside the room had been evacuated, leaving only the 4 core members of the Yan family. Yan Qishan also looked at his sister with mixed feelings. Of course, he was not jealous, he was only happy for his sister from the bottom of his heart. All these years, Yan Qingyi's actions had attracted many people's slander and supercilious looks. Many people talked behind his back and discussed animatedly. As members of the Yan family, their feelings were naturally the most profound. They wanted to clear Yan Qingyi's name, but the matter of prophecy was too mysterious. Most people would not believe it, and it was not suitable for them to spread it out. Therefore, they could only hide it in their stomachs. Now, all of this had taken a huge turn for the better. Everyone couldn't wait to hear Yan Qingyi talk about the mysteries and mysteries behind it. Just what kind of fortuitous encounter did she have that could cause such a world-shaking change? After Yan Qingyi sat down and saw the urgency in their eyes, he understood what they were thinking. He smiled calmly and said, "If you have any questions, just ask. As long as it's something that can be said, I will definitely tell you." Her attitude towards her family and others was clearly different. This was human nature. Yan Qishan and Yan Luyan looked at Yan Patian at the same time. He was the patriarch, so this question could only come from his mouth. Yan Patian muttered to himself for a few seconds, then asked, "I heard that you inherited Fushi's Tao intent. Is this Tao intent really that powerful?" The few words that Yan Patian had sent back from Yan Luyan were not enough to understand the mystery behind it, so he broke the pot and asked until the end. Yan Qingyi looked deeply at her father, then looked at the impatient eyes of the other two and muttered to herself, "Because you are family, there is a sentence that is not suitable to be publicized. I can only tell you that after hearing it, you can pretend that you have never heard it before and completely forget about it. Do you understand?" Seeing her speak so cautiously, the faces of the few people sank at the same time. They were incomparably serious, and the wrinkles at the corner of Yan Potion's eyes also deepened. "Qingyi, tell me. I guarantee that other than the few people present, no one else will know." Yan Patian patted his chest and swore to his daughter. Yan Qingyi chose to believe in her father, so she said tirelessly, "I have not only inherited Fushi's Tao intent, that is just an excuse to deceive others. Tang Zheng has indeed inherited the genuine Fushi's Tao intent, but what he has obtained is far less than what I have." Hearing this, everyone was shocked. Even the Fushi Tao intent that Tang Zheng had inherited was not powerful. Being judged by Yan Qingyi like this, it was definitely not wrong. Then how rich was her harvest that she dared to boast so shamelessly? The others all looked at Yan Qingyi in anticipation, looking forward to hearing a shocking answer from her mouth. Yan Qingyi had indeed lived up to their expectations. In a word, she had said some earth-shattering words. The Fushi Tao insight is only a type of Tao insight. What I inherited is the true Tao insight, and it wasn't mixed with all sorts of nonsense. It's the grand Tao of the heavens and the earth, and it's far more formidable than the Fushi Tao insight. Yan Qingyi's words were earth-shattering, shocking the others to the point that they were dumbstruck. So there was such an inside story. What she had inherited, or rather what she had obtained, was far greater than all of this. Today, there is only one chapter. It will be recovered tomorrow. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.